Hello, how are we all? We're all doing well. Hello, Trace and Hex. Man. Getting studies done. Yourself. I feel like I didn't do much today. I know I did some stuff, tidied up the garage a little bit. I'm on holidays at the moment, so it's like just bumming around the house. Got my old gel blasters out. And a ham radio license, interesting. You're gonna be looking over at doing some not only ham radio stuff, but are you looking at doing some radio based internet things as well? It's always interested me. I'm not a big fan of the ham radio stuff. That's internet based radio. Thought it was cool. You want to talk to people in the International Space Station? Yeah, Trace. So, I don't know the exact terms, which is probably why it's not good that I go too far in depth. But from my understanding, mainly watching YouTube videos, there's people out there that have worked out ways of being able to access the internet via radio waves. Now, I'm pretty sure some of them, like, the frequencies that they use are going to differ by country. I know some of them are using, like, mobile phone radio wave frequencies, which is pretty stock standard for everybody. But with the way that they're doing it, it's, you know, using proper antennas and radio setups, as opposed to just a phone. You need me to add reaction sound effects that can be redeemed with channel points. I'm not giving you the pipes. Alright, Nelson? You're not getting the pipes. Plus, I wouldn't hear it. I'd need to set it up so that I could hear it. Like, the music that's playing via OBS, I don't hear that. Which is why I actually rely on you guys to tell me how loud it is. Because I'd get distracted by the music. Yeah, Hex, and it kind of opens up other avenues of, you know, communications that I thought was just really cool. Like, you know, guys being able to communicate with satellites that have been decommissioned, that are still floating around up there, still get some juice. You know, mesh networks and things like that. Like, just so much interesting stuff, and I'm looking at all this, I'm like, this is really cool. And, you know, could be a method of bypassing the major ISPs, but why you'd want to do that on the regular, I don't know. Some countries you might need to do that. But with where I live, it's not an issue. But yeah, like, I've pulled out my old gel blasters and that and started tinkering away at them as well. Fixed up my M4 finally after a couple of years. The fishbone handle on it was loose, so I fixed that up. I had to order some more parts for it so I can actually finish it off. It's missing its muzzle, a hop up. That should really be about it once that's done. I was working on my bloody sniper gel blaster, but I was taking the bolt apart to change the springs out to a slightly stronger one, and because it's cheap ABS plastic, when I was removing one of the metal pins from it, I accidentally broke the plastic. So I'm like, alright, I'll see, you know, maybe I can just weld the plastic up. Kept trying to take the pin out, couldn't take the pin out, and then noticed as I continued trying to extract this pin, which I don't know, whoever put it in there must have heated up the plastic and inserted the pin while the plastic was still hot, so it stuck to the pin better. But there were more cracks in it, compromising the bolt. And the thing is, I haven't touched this gel blaster in a few years, so the bloody thing is pretty much not in production anymore, and everybody's just got old stock. And you used to be able to buy spare bolts for it, but they don't sell them anymore. You could also buy a metal bolt upgrade kit, but nobody sells them anymore. 3D print time. I think I'd need to get a resin printer to be able to do it, because the bloody FDM printer just wouldn't be smooth enough for it to work. I could 3D print it though. Like, I've still got the bolt mostly intact, so I could get my calipers out, do all the measurements, draft something up in probably FreeCAD. It'd actually be a good reason to get into FreeCAD and do that. But I'd need to get my 3D printer set back up. It's sitting in the garage at the moment because I haven't used it in a while, so I need to clean that up. Pretty much because I'm on holidays for the next 4 weeks, I'm using part of the time during the day just to catch up on, you know, all those odd jobs that you bloody neglect over time. And one of them is cleaning out the garage and setting my workbench back up. .04mm. Need to use the what size nozzle would be using that though? Like, I think I have a 0.4 nozzle. I need to have another look. I think 0.4 is the smallest nozzle that I've got. But 0.04mm, that's like really tight. Thing is that this gel blaster as well, I didn't realize this until I'd done more research, like trying to find a new bolt, but the bloody thing, the barrel, the trigger housing, receiver, and the magazines are the same as 2 other gel blasters that are also sniper rifles. It's just the stock that's different, and I managed to find one that was like 60 bucks. So I've grabbed that, and it's a different stock and everything, so I'm like, I'll see how I go upgrading the bolt on that one. If I end up with the same situation where bloody the pins, like, I wouldn't say welded, but it seems like it's been seated in warm plastic, which has allowed the pin to be held more tightly. If I encounter that same situation, I end up breaking the bolt housing, then yeah, 3D printing will probably be the way to go. Height isn't that dependent on the width of your nozzle? Okay. Main reason why I ask is like, because you might, like, don't you have to worry about like squashing? Like your layers getting too squashed? Then again, it does give me the reason to get my the printer housing set up as well. I actually bought some bloody IKEA tables. So sorry, IKEA bedside tables. There's a there's a build that you can do where you use two IKEA bedside tables, one stacked on top of the other, 3D print the mounts and hinges, and you can essentially create a enclosed housing for an Ender 5, or even an Ender 3, it fits that too. Sorry, Trace, what do you mean lack rack? Ah. Actually, I think that is actually the table. Here's the thing though, is like, when I bought these tables, I bought them like a few weeks before I moved house, which was like 18 months ago, and I'd always intended on setting these like the thing up. It's just finding the space in this newer house that we're in. Well, I say newer, we've been here for nearly 18 months. Finding the space has been a bit difficult because it's not as big as the previous house that we're in, so a lot of our shit's in the garage. But what we've, determined is that a lot of the stuff that we've got sitting in our garage that we haven't touched since moving in here, we're going to go through and probably get rid of a lot of it. So it's like, we've gone this long without using most of that stuff, unless it's there for sentimental reasons or we have plans on using it later. And when I say later, like within the next 6 months, we're probably going to get rid of it. There's a lot of old kids stuff in there, old kids bloody baby toys and stuff like that. Lever, hello? Yeah, I'm gonna have to look it up. I'm gonna have to look up the design again, just to make sure that I've got all the pieces. I've got all the acrylic pieces that I need for the panels and that. But what I found, like using my Ender 5, I had issues with heat dispersion, even though it has a heated plate. I was still having issues with heat dispersion because regardless of where I put it in any of the houses that I've lived in, there's always been some sort of draft somewhere, and normally that's the side that ends up cooling faster than the others. So I'm like, alright, I gotta get an enclosure for it. You guys doing lately? You're almost done with Starfield, wait for 320 to drop now. Yeah. Pretty much just trading water at the moment. I'm on holidays, Lever, so I'm kind of kicking around the house at the moment. Although, tomorrow I've got some work to do in the garage. Then after that, I'll probably start working on I got a tablet to repair. So one of my kids, my eldest, he broke the screen on his tablet ages ago. But he was still using it because it was still usable until he broke the charging port on it. Now, I had replaced the charging port on this thing already, so when he broke it, that was pretty much the final straw. He lost that tablet. About a month later, the missus bought him a new one because he needs it for school. But yeah, it was. We've still got the old tablet because it still functions. We just can't charge it. So I figured since I'm going to be replacing the charger on the tablet, I might as well replace the LCD screen and glass on it too, because there was some pixel discoloration on the LCD screen as well. That said, with how much I've spent on this particular tablet fixing it up, probably could have bought a new one. But to be honest, the newer one that I would have bought probably would have been crappier and of a crappier brand, whereas this one's a Samsung, so I'm more inclined to stick with it. Alright guys. Those emotes, Lever, are amazing. So, tonight's reactions slash, it's more a rant for the majority of this stream. The latest bit of news, it seems like there's this wave of, I guess, frustration would be the best way to describe it. A wave of frustration directed towards CIG about the glacial pace on development, about CIG's behavior and marketing tactics, and pretty much the treatment of the community. It seems like CIG has gotten to the point now where they haven't got enough new blood coming in, and all those, the old new blood, so those who have become backers within the last couple of years are starting to come around to the point where they're noticing that there's not as much progression happening, and the way that CIG has been talking to them is and treating them has been declining. Well, that's the general sentiment anyway. So the wave continues, and this, where we're going to start off with, I'll link the Spectrum post, just so that you guys are all aware as well. I do have the ads rolling as well for this, so every 30 minutes is going to be a minute and a half's worth of ads. I actually use this as a method of gating how much time I spend on a subject. That said though, for this particular one, this will probably take, you know, up to 45 minutes. Or I want to spend up to 45 minutes on it. It may end up being less, but there's a couple of videos involved. One of them I haven't watched, the other one I have. And yeah, they're kind of relevant to what we're talking about here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to link the Spectrum post here. If you guys want to see it, it is closed in the sense that you can't comment on it anymore, but it still exists. Yeah, you could become a subscriber if you wanted to, but that's not required. So here we go. So, this is a post here. It's when does when become a reasonable question? Now, as we all know who are sitting in this channel, we're all aware that CIG doesn't like answering when questions because it means that they are giving dates or timeframes which they know they can't normally meet. So let's get started. Not trying to cause trouble here, but this question occurred to me this morning. As the title states, when does when become a reasonable question? I'm known to be a very patient person. I do understand the holistic view of the process which CIG are following, but pushback on when questions must have a point where it becomes unreasonable. They say that as a question, but the sentence doesn't read as a question. We're at the 10-year mark, and when is still not an allowed question. So going forward, how about 12 years, 15, what about 20? If it got to 25 years and when was still not acceptable, what would you think? Not sure where I would put the marker myself, but there must be a point where it's reasonable to ask what stage things are at. Looking at the sources we have right now, the roadmap doesn't really give us any insight into when, only that something was worked on from here to here and will probably stop there for a bit. It doesn't mean it's coming our way any day now or even next year. The weekly shows I enjoy, but they've become more sporadic. The content doesn't always relate to the game itself and doesn't really give any hints regarding any when questions that we might have. The monthly reports are good, but it would go a long way to fostering goodwill if they were backed up with perhaps some shorts showing what is written there. So just a talking point that I wanted to offer up to see what you folks think. And then they have an edit. Lots of interesting viewpoints posted today. I appreciate you all sharing your thoughts, everyone. Now, this thread was closed by Knight Rider. And, you know, this is a bit of a corporate answer. Hey folks, your best bet will be to engage with our public roadmap. The frequent roadmap roundup publishers, Inside Star Citizen, Star Citizen Live Broadcast, Comlink publishers, announcements, official threads, and developer replies to the discussion as a great deal of information is publicly conveyed. I reviewed the entirety of this and the participation within, and will be closing this here, as the replies have been mostly littered with unwelcome and simply ridiculous comparatives on development time / progress, with a liberal amount of snark and shade leveraged on the project, at staff, and toward development, all of which should be avoided, as this doesn't help in providing aid, assistance, or further toward a worthwhile dialogue in offering your perspectives. Now, I actually read this before it had actually been locked, and I wasn't going to react to it until I saw that camera roll on YouTube. Now, Cameron has been on a bit of a, I guess a warpath is for lack of a better term, against CIG. And, you know, he's covering this one. So I'm going to mute the music for a moment. His thoughts, he's obviously looked at this after old mate after it's been locked. The top reply though was deleted by Knight Rider, obviously. But yeah, like, I haven't heard what Cameral's perspective on this is, so I want to listen to it.
Hello everyone, there was a very interesting thread on Spectrum today, started by Tonio Fulks.
Not trying to cause trouble here, but this question occurred to me this morning. As the title states, when does when become a reasonable question? I'm known to be a very patient person, and I do want to push back on the question. I would put the
this train wreck Fs, but we are when questions because it, of course, I think most.
I'm not sure where I would put the marker myself, but there must be a point where it's reasonable to ask what stage things are at.
Of course, I think most of us don't expect CIG to answer when questions because they don't know themselves, but we are now almost 11 years in. We have this train wreck of a tech demo PU, no Squadron 42 inside, so when can we ask when questions? When do we get anything concrete? Overall, this thread was rather harmless, no harsh words towards CIG, but many of us really want to know, do we have to give Chris another $600 million? Do we have to wait another 11 years? To me, it almost looks like it, but then Knight Rider came in and he closed this.
Hey folks, your best bet will be to publishes and within, as this doesn't
CIG is so open and
your perspectives.
Knight Rider CIG makes it look like CIG is so open and gives us all this information, when in fact we have almost no information. Roadmap just released you for the very next patch. Progress tracker, you can only see someone worked on something, but when the bar ends, the task is not finished, so almost no informational value.
Just on that point too, there's actually another thread that was made which we're going to attempt to look at. It talks about that, and to me it's shady as fuck what happens there, but we'll finish off Cameral's video first and we'll continue on. But yeah, Lever, like, I didn't see an issue with the question that they were asking. It's more or less, it bothers me that CIG is treating this as though they don't need to provide this information at all. And realistically, somebody like Knight Rider should actually be saying, look, the reason why we don't give when, like, we don't respond to when questions, or we don't give timeframes anymore, is because, and they need to be completely honest about this, is that we've given you guys time frames, we've given you guys dates, we've missed them, we've hyped you up for something, and we've let you down, and we don't want to do it anymore. Because they all have their internal dates. We know that. They don't show us those internal dates. But instead, what they're doing is they're trying to put a positive spin here. And, you know, like, it does open them up to more criticism. But this is also where, like, you know, CRG kind of needs to get a spine about themselves and sit there and just go, look, you know, we can tell you dates, you know, from here until the end of time, all we want. If we don't hit it, we don't hit it. If you get upset about that, if you don't like that, it's, you know, like, on you guys. But that doesn't mean that we're not working on stuff. Yeah, Trace, that's it. Like, I'm pretty sure they're missing their internal dates as well. And, you know, part of the frustration is that there's going to be legit reasons why they would be missing them. Like, you know, they have people, human beings that work for them, not robots. So, you know, things happen in real life. But then, you know, there's also the other side where company bureaucracy is growing as the company grows. And, you know, how many, I think I talked about this last week, you know, how many times they, you know, how many meetings do they have per day, and how many of those meetings do they need everybody there? You know, are they reviewing their processes? Their post-mortem that they posted, was it not last week, but the week before, I think it was? No, it was last week. The post-mortem that they put out, you know, didn't inspire a lot of confidence in that, you know, one of the lessons that they one of the conclusions that they came to that they needed to get better at was communication. And that's like, no shit, every company across the world, regardless of country that you're in, regardless of industry that you're in, communication is important. It's how you communicate. You know, what parts of communication do you need to work on and improve and fix? All right, we're in an ad break right now as well, so we'll just continue talking here, and once the ad break's finished, we'll then continue rolling with the video. Mainly because those who aren't subscribed and may have gotten the ad, because apparently some people get ads and some people don't, they won't be hearing all of this right now. And yeah, like, that's a really good point. It's not to give dates, but to figure out why they keep missing them for not only months, but years. And I think they did that a while back by pushing Chris into the background and going, mate, you're not allowed in front of a crowd. You know? Chris, stop giving out dates. Where the fuck did this slideshow coming from? You know, how the hell are we supposed to achieve 4.0 in 12 months? You know, that type of thing. You know, if you go back through the citizen cons, you see very ambitious targets. And I think it was like, when we got, I think it was like 12 months after 3.0 came out, the tune had changed among CIG, and like, you know, Chris Roberts was coming out saying, yeah, I'm not allowed to give dates anymore. Yeah, and he still tries to do it, you know, even if it's a loose time frame. You know, most recent example was the bar citizen at Shanghai. It's kind of interesting with the way that it's been, like, the whole situation is being treated there, but like, they do need to work out their internal stuff. And what they're always showing to us is, like, there's always stuff going on. They're still in this perpetual build. You know, like Manchester office, you know, the new one that was built, the new office in Germany that's being built, you know, the new studio in Montreal in Canada that's being built. There's probably going to be upgrades to Austin and LA soon. You know, there's always something that's, you know, outside, external to the project of, you know, Star Citizen and Squadron 42, that something's happening that's outside of, you know, them, to you know, outside of the game's development, that could potentially impact and influence their, you know, development timelines. The other problem is like, they've gone dark on Squadron 42 and they only do the monthly reports. And the first bit of information that we've had, really, that's outside the monthly reports about Squadron 42 was fucking, you know, the Shanghai bar citizen. Hello, Soriel. But yeah, we'll continue. We're getting a bit off topic, or off track here. We'll keep talking. We'll let Camerals finish with his video and then keep the discussion going.
Star Citizen Live, yeah, they are talking about things that are coming into the game in 5 or 6 years. Same with Inside Star Citizen, showing fancy videos of things that we might get 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now. None of those tools offer any informational value.
It's all fake.
Oh, and I didn't forget that we had a real roadmap once. Then CRG called us roadmap watchers and just removed the roadmap. 10 out of 10, Chris.
That's because we made too much noise. Actually, no, that's why they reduced the scope of the roadmap. Because we made too much noise.
Of course, Spectrum is CRG's home turf. They can do whatever they want. They can close threads. They can ban people. That's fine. And we can decide if we still want to buy spaceships. Let me know what you think in the comments below and see you next time. Bye. Auf Wiedersehen.
And he just goes into a little bit of a thing at the end. So yeah, Cameral's still on that warpath against CRG, and I really don't know what he's hoping to achieve other than trying to push people away, which I've always said, like, if there's anyone that is going to push back, like, any potential new backers away from Star Citizen, it is always going to be CRG. They are the best ones at doing it. Now, this was the next thread that I was going to be looking at. I'd seen it earlier today, and I'm going to link it to you all to show you that this is legit. It was deleted. And the title was, "The Progress Tracker is now a complete sham." Now, the title was definitely clickbaity, which it's the main reason why I looked at it. But they brought up a really interesting point in the thread, and it was something that they actually identified in the progress tracker. So we're going to come over here. And what they had said was essentially that the deliverables that they have left over, I'm going to have to zoom out here. The deliverables for Star Citizen apparently, wow, I'm still looking at 2021. The deliverables for the game don't go past the 4th quarter of this year. Now, I don't know how legit that is. I didn't check this myself. I actually wanted to do it here. But this is the 4th quarter here. We're on the yearly view, so we can actually see everything. And scrolling down, these are all the deliverables, and they will take a while to load up. And there's lots of them. Lots of deliverables here. Now, the thing about this is that the progress tracker is supposed to be the tool that we can use in order to see what CRG is working on. It does not mean that they've finished work on it. It just means that they've been working on it. When we come to the end date, you know, like where it stops here, miscellaneous support, ends in November, according to this. And the thing about this is that they're stopping around here. They're probably going to go on break around towards the end of December and come back early January. So to expect anything around this time, you know, it's kind of a non-issue right here. But the progress tracker is supposed to be what, you know, CIG has tied to their internal project management system, their Jira. So whatever they have exposed on Jira should be showing up here. And the thing is, and more than likely, it's a choice by CIG. It could be a bug, but more than likely it's a choice. Where they aren't showing past this point here anymore until, as Trace is pointing out, until they, like, you know, get into the 4th quarter and they have a better idea of what's going to happen in the 1st and 2nd. But the thing is that CIG at the start of every year, everybody gets together and they have their meetings and they go, all right, sweet, we're going to plan the year out. And then, you know, they start scoping out. The thing though is that a lot of these lines we should still be seeing go for past the fourth quarter of this year if it's attached to their internal JIRA. Because for them to sit there and go, oh yeah, no, the work on this is stopping. Or, you know, like, we're not tracking work on this anymore. It's a concern because they keep directing us to it, as fucking Knight Rider did here. You know, public roadmap. This is the public roadmap. This is their progress tracker, the thing that they keep directing us towards. You know, to those who aren't familiar, they'd look at this and go, holy shit, it's done. It must be done. They must be finished, right? Even though there's a caveat that tells you that it just means that the tracking is no longer focused on that particular deliverable. It's frustrating and concerning because it's a legit question when people sit there and go, well, when? And they come here and this doesn't tell them when. Like, this isn't a proper progress tracker anyway because there's no deadline. The end date does not mean that they're like that's when it's done. It just means that that's the end of the scheduled time that they have planned for it, and they may have more scoped out for later down the track. But as you can see, it only goes to 2025, so Stas isn't it's confirmed for 2025 because that's as far as the calendar goes. You could all quote me on that one. All right, and reference the progress tracker for that because that's where I got my information from. The thing that CIG keeps pointing us towards. But yeah, like, I thought it was an interesting point that they brought up. And, you know, the fact that they said that the progress tracker is now a complete sham, I'm like, you're only paying attention now? Like, it's been a fucking sham for ages. You know, the deliverables in the release view, you know, when they changed this so that it would only show the next patch, it's like, come on. You guys need to be showing us more to get us hyped up for stuff. But in the past, you know, CIG was removing stuff too. You know, they'd like be scoping out towards the end of the year and then it would have all this stuff in there, and then as they got closer to it, all the stuff would get gutted out. And then people go on Spectrum and complain. It's like, well, you know, they have a right to complain. You guys need to be better with your estimates, really. It's not like you haven't been doing this for a fucking 5 minutes. That's 2018 for this branch of the game. And they've been working on stuff for it. You'd rather see less and not have a bunch of stuff removed that you're excited for. That's the problem though, is getting excited for things that are set to be tentative. And that's what a lot of people did to themselves. Like, COG controls that, can influence your excitement by not sharing information with you. But that's the problem, is that when they stop sharing information with you, it means that they're becoming less transparent, which means that we can't sit there and go, hey, what's going on? Well, we could still sit there and say it, but we're all uninformed. And it just creates frustration, and CIG just ends up in this position where their moderators going around deleting posts. Like, realistically, we all need to temper our expectations, and if things get removed, then it's like, all right, well, it got removed. You know, salvaging was probably the classic example of being a redheaded stepchild that kept getting added to fucking, you know, the progress tracker, and then it would get removed as it got closer. But we can all see why. Stopped adding cards when we stopped getting actual updates. Yeah. Thought they changed it to 2 patches out max. That was supposed to be for the release view, Sorial. Not the progress tracker. Because that was the point. Everybody was like, well, we can only see, you know, a couple of weeks, or correction, you know, the next patch. You know, the current patch and the next one, we can't see past that. Like, oh, the progress tracker will still have everything there. Well, not anymore. That said, I could be misremembering. Like, I could be wrong with that. But from memory, it was the release view was only of what we're going to get and maybe the next patch, which fulfilled their 2-patch requirement. Progress tracker was the long-term view. So you're going to see further down the line. And that was because the community created too much noise. And the reason why the community was creating too much noise was because CIG is not hitting their datelines. Well, you know, they're not achieving the internal deadlines that they're giving themselves, thus it blows out the public deadlines that they give us. We're not keeping to our promises. How do we stop missing them? We stop making promises. Exactly, Sorrel. They can't break promises if they never make them in the first place. Oh man. It's a pretty sad time that logic actually checks out, and maybe part of their media strategy for dealing with you know, bad publicity. But you know, the game's still going to keep getting bad publicity. There was another video that Cameron had done, and it was on Jared, and it was on a Star Citizen Live. I think it was part 2 of the game dev one where Elliot was making a mission, I think. Or they were showing something about Arena Commander. I can't remember. It was recent, and Cameron was highlighting. I don't want to do another video of Cameron because he has this warpath against CIG at the moment. And to be honest, I think it's an unreasonable stance to be taking. They're just constantly just ragging on CIG. Like, what are you going to get out of this, mate? You're just going to turn people away? So what? CIG will tap into another audience. They have the media. They have the money and the media bloody capability to reach larger audiences than what most of their influencers can. And if they wanted to create an influencer army that supports Star Citizen, they could do it. But they don't. They have a few of them that I wouldn't say are in their pocket, but they have good relationships with. But those relationships aren't based on, you know, these influencers sucking CIG's dick. It's more like, hey, you know, you just showcase the game, and you know, we'll support you showcasing our game, and that's it. That said, CIG do pick and choose who they want to showcase, and if you're being negative, they won't showcase you. That's any business. But yeah, the point that I was getting back to about Cameral's other video about Jared was somebody was asking a Wayne question, and they were being facetious about it. They were being, you know, a dickhead about it. And Jared, you know, I think Jared had just had enough, and the way that he ended up reacting to it was, from my perspective, a bit understandable, but also unprofessional. Which, you know, realistically, sometimes the way that Jared presents to the community, I believe, is we're being spoken to like children at times. I'm not a big fan of it, but at the same time, I think it's part of his presentation style in that he's trying to be informative across a multi-lingual audience. So he can't be always as not affluent, but you can't really dress up your language too much and use larger words. So sometimes you simplify what you say and it comes across as though you're speaking to children. And, you know, it's also a method that you use to make sure you're not being misinterpreted. Yeah, with the way that Jared reacted to the when question, it was a bit unprofessional. And Cameron was like, you shouldn't be speaking to the community like they're children. I'm like, to a point, yes, but you know, this is one of those times where Jared's a human. He made a mistake. Hopefully he rectifies it. He's also modeling what amounts to an ideal customer/citizen. Well, he's kind of the face of CIG. That's what Jared is. Like, he's supposed to be the face of CIG. So he's like modeling what CIG is to the public. And people, like, because of his friendly nature, and he's I wouldn't say he's a great presenter, but he's very good at presenting. I'd say that he's just had a lapse in judgment, got a bit fed up with it, decided to react. At least he didn't swear at him, But honestly, like, when I heard about this, because I didn't watch that Star Citizen live, because fucking a lot of them I've just stopped watching, because they're not informational, they're not useful. Like, a lot of it's just a rehash of something that they've worked on in the past, and it's just slightly updated, or they're just showcasing something that I've already seen or already know how it is done. But it's more aimed at new audiences. Like, his reaction should have been like along the lines of, it could have been somebody's first show and they don't know about when questions and what they've just received, or what a new viewer watching Star Citizen development happen, and the main guy who presents Star Citizen, the way that he's reacting, if it was their first show, they'd be like, this guy's a dick, I'm not going to support the project. And as I said, CIG can do way more damage than what we can to their own product, quite easily. Yeah, and that's the point, is like, I think at times Jared does, come across as treating us all like children. I think it's just part of the presentation style, and that he's approaching a multilingual audience. He's human, he's going to make mistakes. Being positive, as you're pointing out there, Trace, is kind of rough, like I can imagine, especially as a job, especially considering that he is also a backer. He started off as a backer and then ended up working for CIG. So now he sees everything, like he sees behind the curtain, and he's probably got his own frustrations as well. And he can't air those out in front of the entire community because he's the face of, he's the face of Star Citizen, or he's one of the faces of Star Citizen, the faces of CIG, of Robert Space Industries. Not really Squadron 42, but yeah, you guys should get what I'm getting at here. It's going to be one of those things where it's like, it's going to happen, but at the same time, it's my thought process. And it's funny because he says this at the start of all the shows where developers are introducing themselves, even though they've been on one of those shows probably half a dozen to a dozen times now. Because it might be somebody's first time watching. Introduce, tell us what your name is and what you do here. It's like, well, Jared, it could be somebody's first time watching. And, they may not know that asking when questions is taboo. And that's kind of I thought that when I was going through that thought process, I thought that was really interesting. That, I immediately jumped to that conclusion. And that was before this thread here had been created. When does when become a reasonable question? I watched Cameral's video about that. And that was before this had been made. And then this gets made, I'm like, this is actually not a bad thread. It's a decent question. I can understand to a certain point why CIG doesn't answer when questions. But to, consider it unreasonable for us to sit there and keep asking when is unreasonable on CIG's part. We're customers. We're excited for the project. We want this game out. We know that, they say that they want the game out too. I'm going to be, a bit skeptical with that everybody at CIG is of that mindset, and not because of the amount of money that it's made, but that they don't care because it's just a job to them. Some of them, some of the developers that work at CIG probably aren't backers and probably aren't interested in, the game getting released, and working at CIG is just another job to them. And that's okay to have, it's okay to be like that. But at the same time, it's like, this particular company has a unique position and audience, in that the audience is a lot more involved than other games, and we're all expecting a fucking result. So when we see CIG saying something to us, we're expecting it to get done. And that creates an additional pressure that a lot of people don't actually fully understand. Thanks for the follow there, Daniel. Yeah, I wanted to show off Mike's video here because it kind of ties into this as well. Can't remember exactly off the top of my head how it goes. I do remember watching this. I'm like, this ties into the whole theme of like CIG creating expectations and not meeting them, and then, you know, kind of going through and trying to hide them. So that's a video there if you guys want to go watch it in your own time. But we'll watch, this is Mike's video on Star Citizen has done this for years.
Star Citizen has been in development for nearly 11 years now, and it has gone through a lot of growing pains over those years. But one thing that has remained consistent is after having some sort of a failure or doing something wrong, they say they'll do better. And we have had our latest example of CIG's version of a YouTuber apology, the 318 and 319 post-mortem. Now, I and many other creators have covered this thing from front to back, and you guys are probably quite familiar with it. So I plan to take a little bit of a different approach. Many creators in the Star Citizen space will report on things that CIG say as something that's actually going to happen. Myself included sometimes. Remember the letter for the chairman last year? I actually...
Half the volume. Give me a sec. Let me see.
Believed they cared about their game as a live service. Since the letters were written, countless things have proven the words in those letters completely worthless. But it wasn't just the letters. This goes back years in history. Let's talk a little bit about the behavior of CIG and why this behavior might actually be catching up to them. I think the best place to start is with the pledge. Remember that? Many of you probably never heard of this. This is the Star Citizen Pledge. You've pledged your money to earn your citizenship. Now it's our turn. We, the Star Citizen team at Cloud Imperium, hereby promise to deliver the game you expect. You, the tens of thousands of pledgers, have allowed us to cut out the big publisher and build the game on our terms. That's certainly happening. To let us focus on quality, free of the pressure to deliver by a certain financial quarter, to nurture a new original IP, to put fun ahead of shareholder profits. Yeah, that one's happening. We, the developer, intend...
Just going to pause there. This pledge as well was made before 10% of shares were sold off to that media company. So there is actually a shareholder now that's external. Keep posting the pledge on Spectrum and gets your post deleted. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like they're bringing up, like Mike's bringing up the pledge here, and I'm always curious how many new backers know about this, because this is old. Like I believe this is like 2014 or 15. Could be actually 16 as well. I'm pretty sure it's 2014. Now, this pledge came out after the community had voted and said that they wanted CIG to focus on making the best game possible. So, you know, they essentially gave Chris free reign, because what had happened before this was that CIG had hit the crowdfunding goal. They continued crowdfunding on their website, and, you know, like Star Citizen at the time was still referring to Squadron 42 as Star Citizen as well. It was a bit confusing. They had kind of given it the name Squadron 42, but they weren't treating them as two different IPs at this point. They'd asked the community if, you know, CIG, if, you know, the community wanted them to stay the course, get the game out as quickly as possible, which was Squadron 42. That's the game that they kickstarted. They just called it Star Citizen at the time. And Squadron 42 was kind of the story of it. Whilst they also sold packages for the, you know, the multiplayer, game that was inspired by Freelancer. That was based in the same universe, which was Star Citizen. Anyway, what we've got here is that they got to a point with their crowdfunding where Chris was like, we can do a lot more, we can do a lot better. And then they put it to the community to a vote. They said, hey, do you guys just want us to focus on getting this game out ASAP? Or do you want us to, make, a game that pushes the boundaries? And it was, this is during the Kickstarter hype as well. This is all still, Kickstarter hype still going on. Star Citizen is still a fucking, concept. I think maybe the hangars were out at this time too. But we didn't even have like Arena Commander. It wasn't even a module at this point. All we had was like Wingman's Hangar and things like that. And the community that voted at the time were like, no, go for gold. We want the best game ever. And the problem is that no fucking time frames were given at all. No time frames, nothing. So what we're seeing here is that, the community at the time, which was significantly smaller than what we've got now, said, we're okay with it. And, hence why we're still here. And over the years, from, the time of this pledge, Chris was giving dates and deadlines and saying, yeah, we're going to hit these. And, the majority of the community, we don't have any idea of what's going on internally at CIG. We only know what they tell us. So when you get the CEO getting in front of everybody and going, yeah, we're going to hit all these deadlines and, progress is going so much further ahead, we're all like, yeah, shit, the head honcho's out here saying this. Ah, we're in a fucking ad break. It's supposed to give me a warning before it starts. I'll wait until the ad break finishes before we continue the video. But yeah, in this sort of instance, we're in this position where we don't really know what we're getting ourselves into yet. We think that CIG is a lot further along and they're a lot more capable than what they actually have been telling us. So of course people are going to say, yeah, go for gold, Chris, we believe in you. We've already thrown so much money at you. And more people will get involved and excited. So, now we've got what we've got. The problem here, though, is that not many people know about this pledge, this promise from CIG. And the thing is about this pledge and why Mike's highlighting it is that CIG has told us, they've made a promise that they will be transparent, that they will show us what's going on. And over the years, if you've been playing Star Citizen, if you've been tracking the project closely, you will have seen a decline in transparency, a decline in what they're showing us. They're still fulfilling the basics of, their weekly shows. Although, like ISC, what is it? We only get 8 episodes of those a quarter. And then there's 4 weeks where there's no episodes of ISC, but then we get, Star Citizen Live. We're not really informed about what's going on in the background. Like, we don't get any sort of, dates outside of the release view. And the release view is still, only what's coming next. And a lot of people will say, oh, I only want to know what's coming next because I kept getting disappointed by CIG not hitting their goals. And it's like, well, because of that now, we don't know what they're working on. CIG has essentially got the license from that mentality to close off information because too many people get disappointed because they get themselves hyped up. I'm not going to say that it's their fault, but it's an angle of attack that CIG can use to go, well, we don't want to disappoint people by telling them stuff that we're going to not be able to achieve. And it's like, Chris, CIG, that's how your entire project started. Like, you guys told us that you were going to be able to do this. So this is the status quo of you telling us that you're going to do something and then you needing to be able to do it, or you working on it until it's done. And that's, you know, to me, that's a problem. It's a huge problem. And unfortunately, because of, you know, marketing tactics, no news is good news. So by not saying anything, there's no bad news going out either. Anyway, we'll continue listening to what Mike says, because he goes a little bit more into the pledge.
Tend to treat you with the same respect we would give a publisher. You will receive regular updates about the progress of the game. We will do a show and tell for each major milestone. They're doing that. Your voice will be heard and represented in our development docs and our feature wish list. You will see art and video, learn about how we intend to implement gameplay mechanics well before the rest of the world. The website will be updated and the community will be maintained. If no when questions, don't say anything about moderation, don't say anything that might make the game look bad. If that's maintaining a community, they're 100% meeting this pledge. Though the limitations of technology may slow us, we will always do our best for you. If it breaks, we will fix it. They didn't say when they will fix it, but the usual answer has been, well, we have plans to redo that, so wait until we get to it. How long has your favorite feature been waiting on an update, right? There may be delays. There may be changes. We recognize that such things are inevitable, and we would be lying to you if we claimed otherwise. But when this happens, we will treat you with the respect you deserve, rather than spending your money on public relations. The community, moderation teams basically have morphed from a team of people engaging with a niche game community into nearly pure public relations at this point, but the exception being spending money to fly devs to bars to hang out. Oh, anyone see those Playable Now ads on YouTube the entire time the game wasn't playable? Yeah, there was that too.
If you've been following me and, you know, across all the different channels that I operate, you'll already know my stance on the bar citizens and flying the devs out to them. It bothers me a lot because they're just company-funded piss trips that are thinly disguised as community outreach. As far as I'm concerned, if CIG has the time to send people to go off and do that, they've got the time to put them in front of a camera on Twitch playing their product. Now, they're probably going to have to put them in their own environment, because I have seen firsthand what happens when a developer does try and play and they're not in a protected environment. Like John Crew, he used to stream on Twitch and he would try and play Star Citizen and he was getting stream sniped regularly. Like people would just attack him. And, you know, it got to the point where he's like, yeah, I just can't do this. And, you know, started focusing on other things. But as far as I'm concerned, like, you know, community outreach needs to be a more consistent thing. And unfortunately, you know, I brought this up, I think it was last week, that the community outreach that CIG does now is more corporate. It's all focused on, you know, like, trying to sell good news, never bad news, and, you know, trying to market their product all the time, which is concerning, because the product should really be speaking for itself. And, you know, if you have to try and make your product look better than what it is all the time, you probably got a weak product. And instead of being upfront about it and saying, you know, we're still working on it, and making that, you know, the point, instead you're trying to tell people, oh yeah, it's good to go. No, like the whole, you know, play now when the game's not playable. That's a problem. And we all sit there and we all, you know, I know I say it. I know there's a few other people that are saying it now too, that, you know, CIG is just honest and upfront. They'd probably see less backlash. But we're not getting that anymore. They tried it for a little bit and it was more or less like they just, unfortunately, it felt like that regardless of which way they were going to go, they're always going to get told off. And I thought, you know, this was before we got the roadmap, the current iteration of the roadmap. You know, they had heaps of different roadmaps and things like that. And, you know, they exposed a lot of data and, you know, how far along it, you know, something was being, from being completed. They actually used to show that to us, the amount of tasks associated with it, how many tasks have been done for that week. And there were just people out there who were watching the roadmap like a hawk, and, you know, they were happy when things progressed and then upset upset when things went backwards. And it's like, okay, it's kind of understandable, but at the same time, CIG does make it clear that these are tentative dates, the tentative tasks, things can change, things, you know, they may learn something along the way. There's no tutorial that they can look up on the internet and go on YouTube and look up how to make Star Citizen. A lot of it they're doing on their own. And because of that dissent there, you know, CIG made changes so that, you know, they were getting less bad news. And, you know, it seemed, unfortunately, it looked like it paid off for them because, you know, when they started doing that, their sales started going up. They started restricting information, their sales started going up. But I believe we're reaching a point now with CIG's exhausting a market with how they're presenting Star Citizen now. And they're in this position where they can't keep trying to, you know, sell the same dream over and over again. They're struggling to give updates on the product that they're building, and they're not getting as much fresh blood in because all the crazies got in on the ground floor first, where, you know, the diehards that sit there and are like, yeah, I want to play this game forever, and, you know, it doesn't bother me if it takes 30 years to build. Start bothering some of them soon because they're going to get in their 60s and 70s. But, you know, like, we're in this position now where it's like a market is being exhausted of those who are willing to be early adopters. Because technically that's what we all still are. We're still early adopters till the product's out. It's all early adoption. And unless CIG is able to turn, you know, like their negatives into positives, they're going to have to keep expanding into other markets. And that's something that I don't think CIG has done well yet. They haven't worked out how to turn a negative into a positive. You know, like, honesty is going to be the best policy for them, as far as I'm concerned. They should just be flat out honest. Like, you know, they've tried doing it. They just need to keep reinforcing that point. And that goes back to the point that I was making about Jared, you know, being a bit unprofessional when somebody asked a when question. Even if the person asking the when question was being facetious in Twitch chat, there could have been, you know, 100 new people to the project watching that show. Heard the bloody presenter talk to somebody like that and going, you know what, I'm not going to bother. Not going to bother with this project to wait until it comes out, or, you know, it is a scam and pretty much just being treated like kids. I don't want to be treated like that, so I won't buy in. So yeah, you know, I think honesty is going to be the best policy for them. Anyway, we'll keep watching what Mike has to say here. He continues on down the same thought process too.
When we need to change a mechanic or alter something you believe should be in the game, we will tell you exactly why, when it's convenient for us. If it's not, we just won't say anything. Your support over the past month has been incredible. You've done your part, and we will now do our utmost to live up to your expectations. We will build you the game that you're dreaming about. Signed, Chris Roberts and the Cloud Imperium team. So the pledge is going well. Let's fast forward to 2016 at that brisk fall night in Los Angeles, when everyone's favorite chairman let us know that their amazing plans are gonna happen for his game. These slides weren't even the bad part. They were radio silent on their single-player campaign, Squadron 42, set to release in 2016.
Answer the call today.
It still isn't out. Meanwhile, his wife is taking a show of hands of how many people want to play the game on consoles at a Shanghai bar citizen.
Squadron, do people prefer to play that on PC or console?
How about something more closely related to the postmortem? Aaron Roberts, Chris Roberts' brother, Nepotism Intensifies, told us about a cool new way of developing their game. They're going to stagger it. The features come in nice and polished. The lie detector test determined that was a lie.
The lie detector determined that was a lie.
And back to the ones that did me really dirty. Those letters from the chairman. They didn't have all the bells and whistles like all the previous examples. They didn't seem blinded by the lights. They seemed motivated. I was in 100%. I believed they were going to treat the live servers more like a game and the PTU like a testing environment. They released 3.18 without proper testing. They didn't prepare for the numbers they were getting. They put in ships that were only purchasable for real money in the game for many months after the standard they set for themselves was passed. They released very broken patches to live because they had another ship sale planned, and they ran events that they knew would degrade the servers after people finally could play after all those problems. And those were just the ones I can remember off the top of my head. How many things from CitizenCon last year are in the game today? Many of those features are not server meshing dependent. Keep that in mind this October as well. I don't believe a thing that is written or said by a single member of this company anymore. But that doesn't mean things are all bad. They're adding a lot of awaited fixes for long-standing issues in the next patch in 3.20. They aren't planning on doing this. They already did it. Listen, I love Star Citizen and I want it to be the best it can be. But if you're defending their behavior, defend them based on their actions and less on their intentions. Intentions mean nothing without action. And in the last few years, there's been some action. Sure. Not enough from me. They can do better, and they have to. I could care less what they say. Their actions are starting to actually have a negative impact for the first time ever, it seems. In years, no matter how they treated us, they could just draw a picture of a ship and it would sell like hotcakes. This year, they failed to deliver on the plans in the chairman letters. The game was unplayable for months, and for the first time ever, they're gonna make less than they did in the previous year. Actions have consequences. CIG easily could start delivering on some of their communications and intentions and gain the trust back in an instant. Everyone.
That particular part there, I take issue with what Mike is saying. I don't, like, unless he's got insider knowledge there, telling him, you know, like, these features are almost done and could go into the live build for Star Citizen, you know, like, in the next patch. Unless he's getting that sort of information, he has no fucking idea. But we're all relying on the information that CIG puts out. And that's the problem, is, like, we don't know. But part of the reason why we don't know is that CIG has used the excuse that they keep disappointing us, people keep getting upset, and then, you know, CIG uses that as their reasoning for, oh, we don't want to get your hopes up. We can't deal with the, you know, the noise. We don't like the noise that we're getting now. So, you know, it's a serious issue to the ability for CIG to be transparent, but it's also an excuse that CIG can be more obscure with how progress is going. You know, like, we've been on the road to Pyro, what, we're going on 3 years now, almost 4. On the road to Pyro, almost there, guys. We're almost there. Fucking long ass road. Yeah, we'll finish off, like, Mike's got like 12 seconds left.
Wants this game to succeed, but not at the expense of both literally and figuratively their community. Thanks for watching, everyone. Leave a like, a comment, and subscribe for more.
Yeah. Like, there are a lot of good points that Mike brings up, but it's not going to change anything. Like, honestly, it is not going to change anything with what CIG is doing. It's not until CIG starts seeing the money pool drying up. And as you can see, they're already angling towards the Asian market. I don't like pointing that part out too. Like, I don't like saying, for starters, like, you know, they're trying to tap into the Asian market because they see, you know, massive financial potential, which they do, but I also don't like describing it as the Asian market like it's completely separate from the rest of the world. In some ways it is, but in other ways it's not. Star Citizen is an international product. So realistically, it's just the global market is expanding to include, you know, countries like China and that, which technically is already included, but it's probably going to expand further when, you know, they start making pushes in there. Especially with a 1,500 person bar citizen, which is larger than what CIG has done for their fucking citizen cons. But yeah. The next... Got a couple more Spectrum posts that I want to go through that kind of contributed to this topic, and it kind of for me, when I go through all this, this is setting the tone for, you know, what I consider the increasing frustration amongst the community with CIG's communication, method of presentation, and how they're treating the backer or the backers. In that, you know, we're essentially being treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark, fed shit, only given enough light to keep us alive. You know, keep us growing, and now we're getting to the point where I think a lot of us have reached our usefulness. So, this next post, actually I'm going to pour myself a drink quickly. This next post I haven't, actually no, this one I have read through. But it's tied into, you know, the whole Squadron 42 and lack of information coming out about it. Myself personally, I don't really care about Squadron 42, but it is the main effort for CIG. So it is a contributing factor as to why the game that we all want is being delayed, as far as I'm concerned. There we go. So Squadron 42, what pill can you handle, the red or the blue? 11 years ago, I pre-ordered a game and some digital items. I'm still waiting for it, Squadron 42. I have not the slightest interest in Star Citizen. You're the weirdest fucking person on the planet as far as I'm concerned. Mr. Roberts asked for help, mostly money. After 11 years, the company in charge to make the game, the official forum, do not have a section dedicated to Squadron 42. CIG do not want to discuss any information regarding Squadron 42. Or Squadron 4, it says there, but yeah. CIG refuses to show any media regarding Squadron 42 development. Mr. Roberts stopped any friendly and casual engagement with the community. Shanghai bastards, I would say otherwise. And then it is like Squadron 42 does not exist. Morphed to a highly classified Apple iOS car project. What's the best pill to take, the red or the blue? Is it their green one? Kind regards to all. And then they screenshot the pledge. Now, I was actually curious about the whole Squadron 42 thing, so let me go here. And there isn't. There is no Squadron 42 forums. And again, what would they talk about since they're not discussing Squadron 42, you know? There's no dedicated section to even discuss Squadron 42. Even just to share the monthly reports for it, so that people can go back and read through it. Yeah, like CIG isn't releasing any information on Squadron 42 outside the monthly reports. Like, this guy actually brings up, this person brings up a lot of good points. Yeah, let's get this back up and running. And this is supposed to be their main effort. And it's concerning. Like, we should actually be hearing a bit more about it. Like, we saw a vertical slice years ago. We haven't seen any more of it. We might see more of it at CitizenCon this year. That's what Chris hinted at the Shanghai Bastards. So, keep an eye out for the, you know, CitizenCon, but he's still trying to sell his product, so of course he's going to direct people to the next big event that they're running. Yeah, what was it? Patch Watch or whatever. This is pre-recorded, isn't it? Yes, of course it is, Silence. Yeah, when they showed off the Aceto what's it called? The Aceto satellite dish and all that, which to me, like, that entire episode was kind of just nothing. It really didn't contain much. Showed a few cool little things, but it just, I just watched them like they could have just invested the time in doing nothing else. They could have just not made this video and it would have been fine. And it seems like they, you know, they came to the same conclusion. Now, the next post, I actually haven't read through this one yet. But claim and reality. Now, this has to do, and I guess this is an example of, you know, some of the, I wouldn't say disillusion, but it's pretty close to this. The experiences that the backers, you know, of the community are having with CIG's information that they are putting out. For years we've been reading and hearing announcements like this. We have developed a tool that allows us to automatically / procedurally generate object X and integrate it into the PU. With this incredibly great tool, we will be able to drastically increase our development speed and quality. A lot of this has to do with building outposts, building planets, building moons, and all that sort of stuff, missions and shit like that. Okay, that's been the claim for years for countless different things and systems. So what's the reality? No idea. As a backer, at least for me, it's hard to discern any difference. Maybe it has gotten drastically faster, maybe not. I can't say for sure. Well, let's just look at what we have. We still only have one star system. This one star system is still not complete. Important objects in the system are still missing. A large part of the system is empty and dead. The part that is not empty is extremely repetitive. I've also noticed that UIs are being rolled out. I also haven't noticed that the UIs are being rolled out any faster. Maybe they are, maybe not. No idea. We're talking about building blocks there with that one. Let's just look at the last postmortem. The procedural river placement tool was not in as good of a state as we had hoped when we started using it. As a consequence, a considerable amount of manual effort was required to meticulously place and verify the resulting rivers to ensure their optimal quality. Moreover, this limitation also led to a decrease in the number of rivers we were able to generate. Or, with neither the tools for procedurally assembling locations nor automatically placing them on planets ready for use, we had to build and place every cave manually, which was a primary constraint on the number of caves we could place on planets in the Stanton system. Unfortunately, these caves had to initially be released without missions, making them into locations the player actively needed to seek out to experience. Which I thought was interesting because, from my understanding, they already had this shit sorted out. And that building caves was an extension of the room building system. I don't know, like, that's conjecture right there, guys, but for my, you know, this actually comes across as interesting and might be worth diving into, checking ISCs and that. Apparently an ad is about to start, even though the pre-roll is supposed to be off for the next 7 minutes. We'll see. I want to be wrapping it up anyway after this one. Overall, most of the caves are simply nearly identical copies of each other, which there are a handful of different basic types that more or less only differ at the entrance, just like most space stations only look different from the outside. Or, we wanted to redrop the locations of Rastar, however we were unable to at the time due to breaking the shops. Okay, to make it short. Things are not going as planned, and that CIG has a problem with roughly estimating things is another story entirely. Let's take it as a given here. And yes, they funnel a lot of resources into Squadron 42. If we accept that things aren't going as they should and we can live with that, there is still a massive problem for me. Your communication. I feel absolutely taken for a fool when you drop another letter saying, yeah, it didn't go well, but by Q4 it will be ready. And everyone, or nearly everyone, immediately knows what nonsense. With a high degree of certainty, it will not be ready by Q4. Why do I know this and you don't? Of course you do know it, but you won't but you don't say it. You must think we're even dumber when you drop phrases like this. We have made substantial progress and are now much closer to achieving our goal than ever before. I'm guessing that's a generic statement. Yes, what else? That you're further away from the goal after all this time and money than before? Of course you're closer. Today I am older than ever before, and tomorrow I'll be older again than ever before, and the day after tomorrow as well. If I hear the phrase one more time, we have developed a new tool with which we can very, very quickly make much, much, much better things, then I'm going to vomit. We get it. Things are hard. Things can go wrong. Okay, but spare me your marketing blabber. It only makes things sour. Okay, and a last one. His ballistic Gatling equipped variant tears through gunship armor and turns small fighters into dust in seconds. I'm guessing that's a marketing thing. But yeah, like everything that COG puts out to us, and I guess to some people it's still a surprise, but everything that COG puts out to us is marketing speak. Has some level of marketing speak involved. And I'm pretty confident that the developers are being told, you know, you can be honest to a certain point, but then, you know, they'll have somebody going over the information that they're going to put out and readjusting it to be a bit more palatable. The problem is, though, is that, you know, they do end up saying, oh yeah, we've made progress on this thing, or, you know, we're working on this thing that'll make, you know, our jobs easier down the track. No shit, you should be doing that. Been doing it for years. The post-mortem, though, I think is a step in the right direction. I think COG just needs to work on how they communicate it. Unfortunately, you know, we're in this position where we have people who are rolling into the project all the time, new people. And not all of them are as informed as what we are. So, you know, they're always going to be told, you know, they're going to be treated differently to the way that those who have been around for longer have been treated. But at the same time, a lot of the information is orientated towards people who don't follow the project as closely. So, we're in this position now where we continue to be told by COG that they're working on it, they're building it, it'll be done soon. You know, there's progress happening. It'll, you know, make things easier for them. All the buzzwords without actually being told the results. And, you know, as our mate's pointing out here, and as I've said, like, we only know what COG tells us. What they put out is another thing. And unfortunately, because they've restricted their communication to only what they're going to put out soon, it doesn't look like they're working on much. Hopefully we see more progress from them from, you know, CitizenCon. Hopefully it's not like last year's where it was kind of like, yeah, no shit, we already know about all of this. And the stuff that you showed us about Pyro isn't really... It's kind of stuff that we already expected you guys to have. Not all of it's incredibly interesting. At the end of the day, and this is something that, you know, COG needs to acknowledge and come up with a strategy of dealing with, other than telling people, hey, you know, don't ask when questions. COG needs to come up with a strategy that allows them to address when questions in a way that just doesn't make it look like we don't want you asking us that. And they're going to have to do it every single time. Because, you know, every bit of content that COG puts out may be somebody's first bit of content that they're interacting with. And if they don't know when it's coming, and COG says no when questions, don't ask when. You'll get it when it's ready. It's not a very good look. Oh. That went for a lot fucking longer than I was expecting to. It's going to be a bit of a bitch to cut down. We just finished an ad roll though. gonna have to leave those all open for now. Managed to cook, eat, and clean in that time. Yeah, I think that went for about an hour and 20 minutes. Way longer than I was expecting it to, but there's a lot of information to go through. And that's the thing is like, other reason why I'm doing these, you know, doing a segment for my reaction to rant stream. One, not many people go down that route. Probably because it's a bit long-winded. But at the same time, it's like, this is actually one of those topics that I think is worth covering a little bit more in depth. Two, this seems to be a recurring theme at the moment. You know, we're at the end of a patch cycle, everybody's getting bored. Star Citizen for the last 4 weeks is pretty much, you know, getting attacked to a certain, degree. Still have 2 hours of work, we can keep going. And there's other topics to talk about too. But yeah, like, Star Citizen's under this barrage at the moment. CIG's under this barrage, and to be honest, I think the more opinions that go out there that, you know, kind of articulate to CIG, hey, you need to get better at your communication from the perspective of telling us, you know, what is coming, when it's coming, and if you can't tell us when, you need to come up with a better way of dealing with that sort of topic. And if, you know, as I said towards the end of like the last segment, like, CIG I think just needs to start treating every bit of content that they put out there somebody's first bit of content that they're interacting with from Star Citizen. So, you know, like if people have you know, if people are going to ask the when question, it needs to be considered completely reasonable, and CIG need to be completely open and honest about why they do not give dates. And, you know, it seems to be this unwritten thing where everybody knows why CIG doesn't do it, because people get hyped up and CIG doesn't hit the date, then they get upset. And the fact of the matter is that we all know that, you know, and primarily because CIG is telling us, but those who do work in software development know you're not always going to hit your targets. Yeah, Silence, I said in This Week in Star Citizen. So it would have been earlier today for me, but yeah, 320 is supposed to be released the day after This Week in Star Citizen, so we'll wait and see. Yeah, I'm not holding my breath. But yeah, CIG does need to approach those when questions, inform people why they can't answer them, and be open and transparent about it. Like, they need to communicate that. And they need to get better at their communication from the perspective of, like, hey guys, buddy, you know, we know that you can't, you are all hyped for this particular thing. You need to understand though that, you know, we have human beings that work for us. They're not robots. They have their own thoughts and aspirations. Things happen in their lives outside of the studio that are outside of theirs and ours control, and they may be working on a specific feature that, you know, they can't be easily, you know, replaced, or their work can't be handed over to somebody quickly, which delays those features going out. But, you know, I think that's part of the problem. I don't think that's been communicated to CIG, you know, well enough. So maybe I'll make a Spectrum post on it, react to it next week. I have the time. Which as we have experienced the last year is usually EU Prime, so still another couple of hours to go until we know if it's right or not. After the 320 going live, yeah. Yeah, that was always the running meme amongst Mongrel Squad. Bloody new patch is going to drop? Yeah, just wait until the EU event starts, and then they drop it then. Alright. This one is a bit of salt. I don't know if, you know, the last topic may have been a bit bland for you guys, so thought I'd get a bit of salt in there. I wouldn't say spice it up, but, you know, bring some flavor back to the channel, back to the session. Time to rename Star Citizen to Space Pirate yet. Really, I can look forward to all the complex mechanics and cool features still in the pipeline. Hangars and cargo hauling discussed today are a case in point. I'm pretty sure they're talking about last week's ISC. I'm very eager to see the implementation of both soon. Really, none of it matters unless criminality is treated more seriously in this game. The way I see it, players will simply not be able to enjoy all of these mechanics and features if COG keeps touting piracy as one of the coolest things this game has to offer. Why should I go through all that cargo hauling trouble if every landing zone is plagued by pirates who have little to lose? As long as the disruptive behavior of these players, who will always prefer harassing other players over NPCs, goes unpunished, this game will not expand its player base much beyond what it is today. Cynical me, Chris is probably not too worried about delivering his dream game anymore since he got to fund a company and a game engine with our dollars. Patient me, fingers crossed they constrain piracy soon and will allow us all to enjoy the fun game elements implemented and still in development. Impatiently yours. This fucking line here. As long as a disruptive player of these behaviors goes unpunished, this game will not expand its player base much beyond what it is today. I've been hearing this for fucking years, alright? And we've grown the community base 3 million players since then, or 3 million accounts. Like, we were hearing this in 3.0, this particular line. And we've increased by 3 million accounts. Doesn't mean players. Doesn't seem to fucking matter. It's not players that are the problem. Players aren't going to drive other people away from playing Star Citizen. And buddy, COG keeps touting piracy as one of the coolest things the game has to offer. Part of the reason why COG keeps pushing this forward is because piracy is the counter, profession to cargo hauling. More players engage in cargo hauling than piracy. The thing is that a pirate can hit multiple cargo haulers, but a cargo hauler is very rarely going to get hit by the same pirate group. I know, Fran, I don't know if you realize it, but old Mandolin here must get, have to fight their way out of the outpost terminal. As soon as the bloody airlocks open, they're fighting their way to the cargo ship, flying off into space, getting chased by 10 pirates. Like, this is literally the post of somebody who wants to be a Care Bear and play, solo player Star Citizen or, Star Care Bear. And that's the thing, is like, I don't think a lot of people understand this when it comes to Star Citizen, is that the game revolves around conflict. Right? Combat is a core tenet of the game. Conflict is part of the game. Alright, there's always going to be some sort of conflict somewhere. Even when you don't want it, it will find you. Either in the form of another player or the AI. The AI is retarded right now. And a lot of these players here who don't like, PvP and don't want piracy to be a thing, or want piracy to be a thing but restrict it so much that it's almost impossible to do and the motivation to do it is gone. These sorts of players here don't understand that the game centers around conflict. And that they need to prepare for conflict. Even if they don't want to. They're going to have to do it. That's the world that this game is building. That's the game world that we're playing in. Now, not all the areas are going to have as much conflict as others, but it doesn't mean that there will be zero conflict. was it a few years back in a Calling All Devs? It was either a Star Citizen Live or a Calling All Devs. They were talking about PvP, and Todd Pappy was like, there will not be a single system that will be 100% safe. You know, he gave very arbitrary, you know, percentages, but he was like, you know, even the most safe systems will only be 90% safe. There'll still be 10% of danger there. And, you know, some players are like, oh, that means PvP. And it's like, no, that just means that there's, you know, the potential for conflict. But the impact that it has on your gameplay is probably going to be minimal. But it could happen still. And it's understandable that people want that in their gameplay. But that's not what we've got right now. And to be crying that, you know, criminality isn't being treated more seriously. Like, in comparison to what? What's so serious about cargo hauling? What's so serious about mining gameplay? What's so serious about salvaging gameplay? Mission running, bounty hunting. What's so serious about those professions right now? You know, how fully fleshed out are those? We don't even have bloody, you know, docking fees. We don't have cargo insurance. We don't have component insurance. You know, we don't even know if COG is going to introduce fees for mining on planets and moons owned by corporations. You know, we meme about it in Mongrel Squad about miners requiring a miner license or mining license. You know, we featured it in a few of our hits. But that's not out of the realm of possibility in Star Citizen to act as a credit sink. You know, there are players out there with millions upon millions of credits. And they got nothing to spend it on. And they've been able to achieve those millions of credits because there's no other credit sinks other than buying ships. Even the resources required, you know, like purchasing fuel, purchasing bloody, you know, purchasing ammo, purchasing, you know, repairing your ship is like chump change. Exactly, Trace. What's the point of having your own planet if you're not charging people to mine it? You know, governments call those taxes. You know, the mining tax. Why aren't people paying a mining tax? Like the refinery fees are a joke. Yes, exactly. The Hurston family is full of altruistic people. Champions of the downtrodden. Or treading people down, I can't remember. Like, you don't hear these people complaining about that stuff. And that's why, you know, like there'll always be this angle of attack where you see these sorts of crybabies, really, complaining about, you know, players, you know, criminals need to be, you know, punished more. We need to take away from them. And it's like, well, if COG didn't want it to happen in their game, they would make it so that it couldn't happen in their game. And it's not the case with everything, because it is, you know, the systemic design does influence a lot of what we get in Star Citizen. But in this sort of case here, it's like, well, piracy is an intended gameplay loop. So what are you going to do about it? You know, keep crying to COG until they get rid of it? They're not going to get rid of it. It's not going to go away. They've built too many systems around bloody, you know, the physicalization of cargo, being able to sell stolen cargo, illegal cargo, being able to move boxes, you know, the combat system. Piracy as a gameplay loop is a result of systemic design. Probably the only purposeful mechanic that was introduced to make piracy possible, and technically it was like this until the start of the year, was QED, quantum enforcement devices. But even then, bounty hunters can use those same fucking mechanics. So it's not even piracy specific. Soft death as a mechanic could be considered something that was added for piracy gameplay, but at the same time, it's always been COG's intent that ships don't explode when you shoot at them enough. They're supposed to go through different states of destruction. and not blow up straight away as soon as their health pool hits 0. And that's because they're salvaging gameplay. They want players to have something to be able to salvage. So at the end of the day, like, you know, piracy is still one of those gameplay loops where, you know, it's just the result of a bunch of systems being brought together. If CIG wanted to kill piracy, they'd have to make players immune to each other. They'd have to make it so that you can't take somebody else's cargo. It's possible, but then they change a shit ton of the game to do that. And they don't want that. They want there to be conflict, and PvP is part of that conflict that they want. And the AI will catch up eventually, and then what? These people are going to complain, oh, the AI is too difficult. And they'll be in the middle of pyro. By themselves. In a ship full of, you know, expensive goods. And you know what CIG is going to say to them? Too bad. They'll say, too fucking bad. Soft death helps with other scenarios such as slightly bumping the floor and being able to recover your lost goods without any third-party intervention. Yeah. That said, there still should be the third-party intervention. Because that, to me, creates the mission systems for, you know, for cargo recovery. You know, all these salvaging missions that CIG has pushed out there, if they had the insurance system in place to support that, they could then create player, or, you know, automatically generated missions that are generated through player actions, you know, like pirating a ship and then soft deathing it, and then, you know, the hauler, instead of going back to try and exact revenge and recover their stuff, I mean, you know what, I'm just going to take the hit on, you know, reputation for the insurance system, claim my ship, claim my cargo, insurance company can handle that. And then you know what happens? The pirates are there recovering the cargo, salvaging the ship. Maybe the insurance company puts out a contract to go and stop them. But, you know, you gotta wait for CIG to build that. And I don't think they're gonna be doing that for a while. That idea has been put forward to CIG many times by many people over the years, and it still hasn't been picked up on. But yeah, like, Star Citizen being named to Space Pirate yet? No. If they're going to call it a space, if they're going to call it anything along those criminal lines, it'd be Star Criminal, right? And yeah, it's not that. It's Star Citizen, not Star Care Bear, and not Star Criminal. It's in the middle. Alright. I think that's enough for this guy. This particular subject. I think it's kind of funny because we actually haven't seen too many of those posts lately. A lot of them are just directed at CIG for, you know, lack of progress. Not somebody complaining about the game and players in it, and that there are pirates stealing stuff, and that they're not being punished enough. Because pirates need to be punished. They're not supposed to be, you know, stealing my stuff because I'm the main character of my story. Because the piracy patch has been released, so people already know it's Pirate Citizen. And it's Pirate Weeks right now. What was it? There was a post by somebody. I didn't bother bringing that one up because I just thought it was dumb. So we going, oh, it's Pirate Week right now, so I'm not going to do cargo hauling. Sorial, not bedroom punishment, Sorial, it's in-game punishment. Not the type that you want. Like, it's always going to be this problem, right? There's always going to be players out there that just do not want conflict. They don't want to be on the losing side because they know they will be. They don't want it. Unfortunately, the game's not in the position to facilitate them yet. They'll eventually be able to play Star Citizen where they're less likely to have these bad encounters. Alright, So the next one, this one's probably going to end up with a ad roll through it, but we'll just get cracking with it anyway. So, I wrote this one. I'm pretty sure this one may actually expand a bit further, depending on how things go with it. I don't want to make another huge segment to the stream though. So here we go. This is Mastermode QED concern. Now, I didn't actually grab the snippet because I'll probably look at grabbing it after this, depending on how I feel. Because CIG did release some information about Mastermodes and QED, which I thought was interesting. But I want to read this out first, and then, because I didn't read it all the way, and then go back to that post. A correction to the video if it makes sense to. Alright. So this is by Gremlin Queen, Mastermode QED concern. In the most recent Star Citizen Live, it was stated that QED, quantum enforcement devices, will be a standard control mode ability. Playing the Mastermodes testbed in the PTU makes me concerned about this. With the current Mastermodes model, you can boost from 250-ish to about 500 in about a second and keep that speed up for about a minute depending on if they put power to engines for quicker boost. In a QED scenario, if a ship were to boost, they would have a massive leap on the QED ship. While we only have access to the Gladius, it's not hard to imagine this in a pirate scenario. A Cuddy Blue has to be within 2 kilometers of a target to keep them entrapped. At the moment that a large ship boosts away, they'll be more than far enough to go into travel mode. I believe they mean nav mode. Once the larger ship is to go into nav mode, they will get the full range of their speed and be able to gain even more distance on things on something like a Cuddy Blue and escape. The Cuddy Blue won't be able to catch up on the large ships. Won't be able to catch up once the large ships get into nav mode, since the QED requires a QED ship to stay in SCM mode, standard control mode, to keep the QED up. I think this is a different person, Silent. So you got both sides of the fence that complain about, you know, piracy in different veins. So those who say it's too easy and those who are saying that it's going to be too hard. Putting QED ships into this position will kill the Cuddy Blue, making it worthless. The Mantis will be able to keep up with ships as it has a 10-kilometer range that ships have to escape. Once again, I'll talk about that afterwards. When another ship boosts, the Mantis can catch up with them. For starters, the Mantis does not have a 10-kilometer range for anything. It's got a 20-kilometer radius, or it has a snare that has a 20-kilometer radius bubble, which can only be used in areas where there's no green zone within 30 kilometers of it. So, yeah. The large ships will be able to boost like the Gladius. Unfortunately, we don't know. Like, we genuinely don't know. That's a problem for all of us. The cargo ship can boost to 500. Why can I also not boost to 500? Well, it comes down to who gets the boost first, and if you don't get the merge on them fast enough. This person is under the assumption that somebody's going to be able to switch to nav mode pretty early on. I'll actually talk about that in a little bit. Alright, this is a suggestion that we're moving into now. A good counter to this would be to either lower the boost speed or allow QED ships to use their QED in nav mode. I'm much more partial for the latter, as a ship in nav mode has no weapons or shields. This would incentivize ships being pirated to fight back and destroy the QED ship, as it is the weaker target. This gives the cargo hauling ship a chance to either fight or negotiate for their freedom, as long as still being to maneuver away from the QED field if they can fly well enough. Lowering the boost speed or how fast it takes to get up to max boost would also be a good option. It also makes it so most people can't just run from PvP scenarios at all though, and we need at least some way to get some breathing room from a fight or to escape it. No matter the change, I think QED being within SCM is just a horrible nerf to piracy. It boxes us into a certain ship and gives us way too much. It still gives way too much of a bonus to cargo. Yeah, pretty much. So this is the major concern across most piracy groups, is that I'm going to switch over to Facecam Live. I will find that Star Citizen Live thing while I'm doing that. The concern that a lot of piracy groups have is that the QED ships are going to be made redundant purely because the transition into nav mode is something that allows us to be able to accelerate over the maximum SCM speeds. Now the problem with that I actually started working on a script for a video, and the reason why I started working on it should be this one. The reason why I started working on it is because CIG actually answers it. I'm going to link. Let's see if I can get the timestamp. I'm pretty sure we're at it here. But there's actually some notes that I want to bring up here. Bring that over there so I'm not getting blinded by the light. So what we're going to do, I'm going to share with everybody here, because I think this deserves a discussion. Share everybody here the Ask the Devs, the most recent one where they talk about QED and Mastermodes. But I'll do that after this ad break ends, because right now people are, some of the people watching won't be able to hear everything that's going on. Silence. By the way, I need to add subtitles to my film. Got any quick tips? I know about adding a background, but how does one do the shadow? Okay, so normally what I do, Silence, if I'm going to do we're going to do subtitles. It really depends on the bloody format that you're expecting the user to be watching on. If you know, generically, it's at the bottom of the screen, above where any sort of bloody. Why can I not remember the name? The seeker bar. Above the seeker bar so that people can, you know, scan through the video if they need to. Depending on how you actually want to do it, you don't need to do a background. You can just put a outline around the subtitles. Like John Wick does something completely different with subtitles, where they actually put the subtitles closer to the center of the screen, around, you know, the same head height as what the user, or correction, the speaker is at. And I don't even think they use a drop shadow or anything. They actually use like the font that they use plus coloring to denote. Yeah, like most of the time it depends on the type of subtitles that you want to achieve. If it's just to communicate and it's not actually part of the movie, and it's for those who are, you know, who are deaf and can't actually hear what's going on, then, and it's something that can be turned off and on, then you're better off just going with YouTube's default stuff. If it's not, and it's supposed to be part of the, you know, somebody speaking a foreign language and you're translating it into another one, then you're better off just doing a very clear and simple font with an outline on it. And if you've got multiple people speaking the same language, you can assist those who are trying to differentiate between who's speaking even further by making the font slightly different colors. You need to embed it into the content. Yeah, so don't even bother putting a background on it then. Just do a Comic Sans. You could just choose like a very simple font that makes it easy to read, and yeah, just put an outline on it. No shadows, just an outline around the text, probably no more than 2 points of thickness, should be more than enough. Be cognizant of the color of the background as well, so that, you know, because sometimes it might not be worth using white for your font. You may actually have to use a different color, like a blue or a green. It's always worth considering going to a site like Color Palette and finding colorblind friendly color palettes to help with differentiating the text from the background. Or an outline. Would the outline be black or the same color as the text? It would be black. I would just make it black, nice and simple. Yeah, not a lot of people will take that into consideration. Grumpy Old Mad, thank you for the follow. No silence. Dude, if you want more help with critiquing what you do, like, just send us a couple of frames of what you've done for your subtitles, and when as long as it's not a tight deadline, I'll take a look and give you feedback on it. You're 2 days overdue, alright. Yeah, dude, just simple font, black outline, no more than 2 points, and yeah, try and get color blind friendly colors, and you should be good to go. Also, if you do go with the subtitles, try and keep it so that colors represent specific speakers if you can. And if you want to like make sure that people can differentiate between your speakers, then you can put their name in there as well. Although normally most of the time you only do it for the first, you know, few sentences that they say, and then after that, if you've done color association with a specific name, you can normally get away with not including the name any further. But then some people get upset because you haven't maintained consistency of always putting their name in there. But you know, it's one of those things where it's like either or. It works. Well, that's good. It's good. Alright, going back to the topic though. I hope this is the right... I'm pretty sure this is the right time. Actually, pretty sure I made a note of it. I did make a note of it. Alright, I can actually give you guys a timestamp. Excellent. Copy URL at the time. I'm going to drop this here for you all. So this is last week's Star Citizen Live where they're talking about Mastermodes. I'm turning the music off. We're going back over here to the reaction scene. This only goes for a couple of minutes. It's just over 3 minutes. Now this will go for.
How will QED work with Mastermodes?
So the for both like aspects of this, there's the player who's firing the QED or using the QED.
Hey, Mordors,
there's the player who's going to be on the other end of it, essentially being pulled out or dampened. So for the person who's using it, the idea is it's going to be, or the current idea anyway, will be in SCM mode along with a bunch of other things, so that you're in SCM, you've got the QED active, and then that's when you can use it. And along with lots of the other, like the combat stuff is all in SCM.
A
that's the
buggy
intention at the
320.
moment. So you can still do all the same,
I'm
everything
prepared
else.
for it.
You have the dampener, you have the
Wouldn't
snare,
say
everything
looking
works the same
forward.
way from that end. And then on the other side, the person who's being pulled out or dampened, the current working plan will be that when you get pulled out, you essentially the quantum drive will be disabled or restricted somehow, because a lot of the internals of Mastermodes doesn't necessarily care about which mode you're actually in directly. It's if your quantum drive is active. That's quantum.
Well, this is an interesting point that I actually want to quickly highlight here. Mastermodes doesn't care about your quantum drive, in the sense that when you switch to nav mode, your quantum drive starts spooling up. And this was an interesting point that they were bringing up, is that when you come in range of quantum enforcement, something happens to your QED. And I think the point that they're making there, Mordors, that they haven't decided on is if it just stops you from being able to jump, or if it actually disables your quantum drive. Because right now, it just stops you from being able to jump. You can still spool up your quantum drive, you can still calibrate with a destination, and as soon as you get out of range, you can jump. Which is something that I've always had an issue with. But if they make it so that it's disabled, then it turns it off completely. And here's the interesting part, is that for nav mode, you switch to nav mode, your shields and weapons go down, and your ship is able to go faster above the SCM speeds. But your quantum drive is actually an influencing factor on that. And this is why they talk about your quantum drive is disrupted somehow, and your ship drops back into SCM speeds, but it doesn't go back into SCM mode. I don't think they actually said that yet. I think they say it in about a minute.
What quite a lot of the things are. So for example, if you're in nav mode, but you've turned your quantum drive off for some reason, or it's been blown off or damaged or distorted or whatever else, you will still lose, you won't have access to those top speeds because the quantum drive's off. So that's what the restriction is. So if you're in nav mode and you get quantum dampened or quantum snared, your quantum drive is going to be off, and you're going to be limited to SCM speeds for that time period, and then you can swap back to SCM mode yourself and then go try and defend yourself. That's the current plan. We still need to test all these kinds of PU specific things, because there's open questions about things like.
I'm going to pause there because they bring up some examples which actually is a bit of an issue. Like, I actually reacted to this on my Friday stream because I ended up watching this. But I ended up watching this live when it was happening. And it motivated me to start working on a script for a video to put up on YouTube. And I've watched this quite a few times now. And my concern that's come out of this now, and my initial concern was a lot stronger, but as I've watched over it more, it's kind of like sunk it in a bit better. And it seems like CIG is going with this systemic approach again with how QED affects quantum drives. So, more than likely, I'm going to make a bold prediction here that for now, it's only going to work against the quantum drive, regardless of the mode that you're in. What's more than likely going to happen, though, is that they will tie the quantum drive to nav mode, because there is no reason to go into nav mode if you can't access those higher speeds. So if the quantum drive is the reason why you can access speeds over SCM speed, then that's your motivation for going into it. Well, if your quantum drive is disrupted and you can't go over those speeds, why would you go into nav mode? So my bold prediction here is that when a ship, like CIG will come around to this conclusion eventually, but when a ship encounters a quantum enforcement device, they will go from nav mode back to SCM. And once they go back to SCM, they won't be able to get out of it. Yeah, except nav mode also allows you to, well, when you go into nav mode, because it's supposed to be, your ship is supposed to accelerate faster, but he literally just said that your quantum drive is actually the device on your ship that allows you to go 2 speeds over SCM. So, for the sake of simplicity, and the bold prediction that I'm making here is based on this data, they will just go, all right, you encounter a QED. If you're in nav mode, we just drop you out of nav mode, because the device, the reason why you'd be going into nav mode is no longer functional. Like, people aren't going to try and engage nav mode afterwards, after they get dampened. It also makes it easier for CIG for their checks, because it's like, are we in nav mode, yes or no? If yes, switch to SCM. Are we in SCM mode? Yes. Don't allow nav mode switch. Myself personally, I think they should do something along the lines of where you can do it if you want. Well, this is where the thought experiment gets easier, and it's why I said it's my bold prediction that CIG will do this, but it's based purely on the data that we have. The hopeful projection that I have, I'll play this particular part first, and then I'll talk a little bit more, because there's a point that he makes, and he's using a very specific example, which at the surface level, you think that they're being very narrow-minded, but it ends up just being an example. But let's finish this off. They only talk about this for 3 minutes, and we're already like a minute and a half in.
In a pirate versus cargo hauler situation with QED, for example, what kind of, like, how often should the pirate be successful versus how often should the cargo hauler escape? Because historically we've gone back and forth in balance a lot of the time, where the cargo hauler is always able to escape, so the pirate can't really do much, or the other way around, and the pirate's always able to catch the cargo hauler. So we want some middle ground between that, and we're still working to get the exact balance of where everything fits.
And then I have to imagine stuff like the upcoming resource management system throws that all into array too.
So this is an interesting point here. I want you guys to remember what Jared ends up talking about here, because the next points that I bring up kind of, I don't know, once I listened to this enough, it gave me a bit of copium, or a huge hit of hopium.
Because there's the default balancing, but then there's what the tuner does, what the mechanic does to increase those chances on either side. And stuff, and how those combine. It's like this person, the attacker has upgraded their ability to QED, but the cargo person has upgraded their ability to resist, and you got rock versus rock here in the thing. So it's a unique challenge, and I'm excited to see it play out as the work of the EUPU feature team comes to completion, and then it gets handed over to folks of the gameplay team. So yeah, I brought that back.
Right, that's pretty much the entire segment on QED that CIG talks about. Now, the reason why I stopped just before the example and then let the example play out, and then continued, identified Jared's little point towards the end. The upgrades to QED or escape is interesting. Now, right now with the way that QED works, it's either you're in the bubble or you're not. And the counter gameplay to QED comes down to your flight skills. There are methods, there are maneuvers that you can use and strategies that you can use depending on the location that you're at to be able to evade a dampener. Doing it against a snare is a lot more difficult, but if the pirate that you're dealing with that's in a mantis using a snare is not experienced enough, you can leverage skill to overcome their snare, which a lot of people don't realize. And you don't have to destroy the mantis in order to achieve that. You don't even need to engage it, you just need to get clear of the mantis. So, but the particular scenario that we're in is that a lot of players don't know how to deal with QED. The way that the AI engage players using QED is the AI doesn't really chase the player. It just kind of sits there. So by default, players are taught, because the majority of the encounters that they have with QED are from AI, they're just taught, fly in a straight line, get out of the bubble, and then you'll be able to jump eventually. When they encounter a player, the QED follows them. And there's a problem with that, in that they don't know what they can do in order to overcome it. And it's only those who really have trained in QED or have dealt with it a lot that know how to overcome QED dampening and that. Yeah, with what Jared was talking about there, with the whole ability to be able, the whole ability of making upgrades, upgrading, a component to improve your, the QED's efficiency, and upgrading the ability to counter it, essentially. That discussion there creates this condition with the current iteration of what we have with QED, in that it follows a similar vein as what Evil Line does with its can't remember the interdictor terms, like webifiers, scramblers. They have interdiction bubbles now. There's a fourth one, actually. I've got notes. I've been making notes on this stuff. What is it? Warp Disruptor, Warp Scrambler, Interdiction Sphere Launcher, and Warp Disruption Field Generators. Those are all mainly passive stuff. You are able to target the ship and utilize those components there to prevent somebody from running away from you. And that's kind of what we've got now with QED. You turn it on, you get in range, and as long as you stay in range of that person, they can't get away. They have to physically move their ship and perform maneuvers or destroy your ship in order to be able to get away. There used to be a cooldown on QED. Eventually CIG got rid of it for whatever reason. I'm pretty sure it actually had to do with pursuits going for close to 20 minutes to half an hour because of the speeds that people can achieve. But we're in this position where the current QED mechanics, they're very passive. The active part is you flying your ship. Now, from a systemic gameplay design, quantum snaring somebody is just ripping them out of quantum travel. After that, the snare acts as like a giant dampener, right? So with the Mastermodes update, they would end up pulling somebody out of quantum travel and then just act like a giant dampener where their where their quantum drive is disrupted in some way, shape or form, and it slows the ship right down, or the target ship right down. Now, with that in mind, the quantum dampener is really the gameplay mode when it comes to QED gameplay, so enforcement and resistance to QED, that matters the most. We could end up in a position where we end up with something like Elite Dangerous's system for FSD interdiction, so their frame shift drive interdiction mechanics, where you're able to tether onto a target using a FSD interdictor. You then play a minigame as the pirate, where you're trying to keep your reticle on the target until the bloody the bar reaches 100%. Meanwhile, the person who's been interdicted is trying to hit an escape vector, and they're trying to hit it for long enough so that they can actually get away. So for me, with what CIG is doing, is that they have the opportunity to expand quantum QED, so quantum enforcement gameplay, where they could kind of make it similar to the way that Elite Dangerous's FSD interdiction game mechanics work. In that, in order to be able to maintain a dampening on a target, or to keep a target from being able to jump into nav mode to escape you, you have to, for whatever reason, do more than just keep the ship within range of you. honestly, you know, from my perspective, it's going to be better for the pilot, for the person who's resisting QED, to be able to do something that allows them to be able to escape, but requires skill to be able to do it. Which is why Elite Dangerous's FSD interdiction mechanics, I think, is something that CIG may look at doing something similar to. And incorporate, like, I know Elite Dangerous does this where you've got different FSD interdictor modules that you can attach to your ship that give you either better range or a stronger pull or range of, arc of influence. And then there's also modules that you can add to your ship that makes it easier for you to be able to resist FSD, or, you know, improve your chances of resisting when you are being interdicted. Yes, Silence, there will be a YouTube video about this. So what we've got here for QED is the opportunity to add a level of complexity to quantum dampening gameplay that improves the opportunity for the target to be able to resist and escape through gameplay mechanics that are more intuitive than what we've got now. Because right now it's just, oh, I'm being dampened, I can't jump away, I'll fly around, the thing that's got the dampener on, I'll just shoot at that and blow it up. It's not really working out because this thing can outmaneuver me. I don't have any turret gunners with me, can't really run away because I'm stuck in SEM. Well, if CIG wants counter gameplay to happen, they are going to have to introduce systems to resisting QED that are more than just passive systems. Like myself personally, my initial thoughts when Jared was talking about, you know, adding modules that, you know, improves enforcement or resistance or to that effect, immediately got my hackles up, because I'm just sitting there going, no, they can't add something passive that just makes it harder for us to be able to, you know, interdict someone. Like, there needs to be a skill-based element. If you don't maintain the skill-based element, you're just dumbing down the mechanics because people are too lazy to fucking try. And you're going against the principles of what your game is supposed to be about. Right? So from that perspective, CIG would need to add another layer of complexity to quantum dampening to make it so that if you want to prevent a target from escaping you, you not only have to turn on your dampener, but when you're in range of a target, you've got to do an extra task that requires you being skilled in flight. And what that does is it requires you to move closer to the target, potentially putting you in range of their turret gunners. And this gives haulers a reason why they should bring turret gunners, because if pirates are showing up, well, you know, pirates in this example, but it could be even bounty hunters, and why, you know, criminals should be, you know, operating in groups as opposed to solo. The requirement that a QED enabled ship has to close with your target and stay within range of it gives the turret gunners an opportunity to engage that target as well. Meanwhile, the pilot can be controlling their ship, making maneuvers, whether or not it's to go on a, you know, try and achieve an escape vector or something like that, or, you know, like trying to exploit weak spots, you know, like maybe QED enforcement or quantum dampening, you know, has strong areas in the bubble and weak areas in the bubble. So if that ends up being the case, then maybe it comes down to the pilot trying to find those weaker areas and exploit that. Who knows? CIG could, you know, literally do anything with it, really. It will end up being passive RNG knowing CIG. Oh man, I'll be fucking so angry if it ends up being passive random number generation. I'll be so fucking angry. So angry! You know, that's the last thing that we want. And that, to me, you know, it's one of the motivations why I'm working on a video to talk about this QED topic and to suggest to CIG to pursue, you know, the more skill-based approach talk about the opportunities here, because something that you can't do in Elite Dangerous, like when you're in FSD, is you can't really engage in combat. You have to get out of FSD, or sorry, when you're in Super Cruise, which you engage in by using your frame shift drive, when you're in Super Cruise, you can't really engage in combat. So when you get interdicted, you get dropped out of Super Cruise, and that's where all the combat happens. Well, in this case, if you get snared out of quantum travel, you're now at SCM speeds. Well, you can get into combat mode, you can fire back, you can engage in the fight. Not everybody's going to want to be able to fight, and to make it so that it's somewhat fair, or to give people a better chance at surviving the encounter, I think it's going to be important that CIG introduces mechanics that allows a more active approach to being able to overcome QED beyond combat. Which is why, like, the escape vector component of frame shift drive interdiction from Elite Dangerous may actually be something worth introducing here. Because it gives the player who has been targeted by the quantum enforcement device the opportunity, if they're being dampened, to be able to escape. Or exploit, a weakness in the device so that they can get back into nav mode. Or do something where, if they time it right, they can, I wouldn't say burn out the QED, but force the QED into a position where it overheats. And that, it may be something as simple as that. You just got to survive long enough against the QED that it overheats. Pirates will overcome that by just bringing enough firepower to drop your ship. Bounty hunters will be restricted if the target's supposed to be brought in alive. But if it's not, then they'll just blow you up anyway. Yeah, we can dream. I'd still like to put the suggestion forth to CIG about this though. I think it makes it more engaging gameplay. I've always been a big proponent for, like, if we're going to... I've always been a big proponent for empowering players. So if we're going to put players in a position where they can be restricted, then we need to empower them so that they can overcome that restriction. What is going on with these ads? These ads are just crazy. They're just happening whenever the fuck they want now. Tell me that I wasn't going to have ads for another 5 minutes. Anyway. So that's where we're at with the QED. What are you guys' thoughts? No, it's based on silence. It's actually based on pre-roll. So it's based on how long my stream has been set, because they're set to specific time frames. But it seems like it's just ignoring it now. Maybe it's because of the first set of ads that I showed off was at a specific time. I don't know. Yeah, what's your guys' thoughts on the QED stuff? No thoughts on it, because who knows how it will be when it's released in 3 years, yeah. Maybe the better question to ask is, like, how would you like to see what would you like to see QED do, or what's the direction that you want to see QED go in? Because myself personally, the direction that I want to see QED go in is something that can be a bit more challenging. Like merging with the target and then sticking to it can be a bit challenging, especially in atmosphere. But the current problem that we've got is that part of the challenge from QED and maintaining the dampener on the target is that we're always in this position where it should stay within range. Lion Wombat, thank you for the follow. Countermeasure fights QED? I don't know. Maybe. Like, countermeasures can affect QED from the perspective of it can disrupt targeting to the point where if you do it right, the pilot of the QED ship may get confused where you're at, and you may be able to get out of range of the dampener. If you're dealing with a dampener, it's easy to get out of range. A bit more difficult with a snare. But if you can get out of range of the snare, you know, like, or the dampener, you could still jump away. And that's something that I don't think a lot of players have experience with. Needs to be a countermeasure for the QED. Yes. That's kind of what we're talking about, but it can't be something as simple as, like, the countermeasure stops the QED from working. Because that's a problem to me. Like, it can't be something as simple as, you know, a passive countermeasure where it's like, yeah, you can't QED me because I got this module equipped. So I'd just be like, as soon as I scan a ship, if I know that they've got the module on them, I will destroy that ship as soon as I can. Out of principle. It's like, fucking, I'm not willing to deal with that sort of noise. If it's a module that improves their chances of overcoming QED through, you know, the skill that they have to employ in conjunction with the module, I'm a little bit more okay with that. Which is why I kind of like with what Elite Dangerous did with their FSD interdiction. A flying skill countermeasure? Yeah, like Flying Wombat, have you looked into Elite Dangerous's FSD interdiction game mechanics? I think that, like, that to me is, I think, what CIG should aim for. No? It's actually quite interesting. I'll see if I can find an example. Want snaring to be a more of an active process, making planets orbit around the star, or to make it more interesting? Yes. People say that it would be impossible to predict quantum travel paths, but I say that it actually makes it more predictable. Countermeasure for QED is blowing it up. Turrets and escorts are great for that. The thing about that is, though, Sorial, is that the countermeasure to stopping your QED from getting blown up is bring more firepower than the target can bear. And then just dumpster on them. But would do that anyway, but yeah. Like, as much as we want to keep pushing that they should bring escorts and turret gunners, there does still need to be something to give them hope, even if it's just a false hope. It'd be extremely hard to predict player movements. How? It's the exact same methodology that you would use for snaring players now. Because planets orbit on predictable paths. The only difference between what we've got now and what we'd have with orbiting planets is that the calculations would need to change, and you'd need to take into account the movement of bodies in different locations along proposed routes. So the calculations would be a lot more complex, but it doesn't make it impossible. Like, if you want to sit there and say that it's extremely hard to predict player movements, then snaring is the exact same case right now. It's extremely hard to predict player movements now. Because you don't know for sure if a player is going to quantum travel, you know. SMO 18 is a good example of this. You don't know if they're going to go to New Babbage, Hurston, Orison, or ArcCorp. You have no idea if they're going to go to any of them. You have to make a guess. But the travel path that they're going to take whilst they're in quantum travel is always the same if they select the destination. So if the planet's orbiting, two planetary bodies orbiting at different points in space at the, you know, constant speeds, you should still be able to trace a path along a route where they're actually going to travel based on where they start and where they're going to. It'll just be curved. And that's something that a lot of people seem to think, is that it makes it almost impossible because, you know, bodies are moving. Well, scientists are already doing it now when they're slingshotting satellites around moons and planets. And, you know, setting up trajectory paths so that whatever spacecraft they're sending out into space intercepts the pathway that they're going to. And that's how quantum travel would need to work if you were dealing with orbital bodies. You wouldn't be quantum traveling directly to the planet. You'd be quantum traveling to where it's going to be at the time that it would take for you to travel there. Yeah, sorry, I'm 100% with that, but right now it's nothing for them. And for a lot of them, they just give up. Players are giving up. As soon as they get interdicted and they realize that it's players, they're just giving up. We don't want them to do that. We want them to hold out hope. We want them at every single stage of a piracy encounter that they feel like they're going to be able to pull something out of their ass, even if they're not going to. We want them to think that. Alright. So, I'm going to share this video with you guys here. You would have to calculate your tiny 20 kilometer, the orbit of the planet, your position, and updating your position. We don't even have instruments like scientists have to calculate those paths. It's maths. It's not about scientific instruments. It's just mathematics. That's it. And the 20 kilometer radius of the snare doesn't matter at that point. Like, if you can do the maths, you can literally put yourself at a point, and this is part of the problem that we got, is that we can't quantum travel to a specific point in space that we delegate ourselves. We're bound to, you know, like, going to known quantum travel points. We can't plot a point on the map. That's a huge problem. That would need to be implemented before we can even consider orbital mechanics for planets and that. But to sit there and say, like, you know, we don't have the same instruments as scientists, it's like, doesn't really matter because it's all mathematics. We just need to know the speed of movement of planet A and its rotation. Oh, sorry. Starting point, end point, where it's going to be at from where you're at to where it's going to, the speed between those 2 points and the distance that you're traveling, and then the time. That's just it. Like, to me, it's simple maths that we just need. And once we get that, like, working out the optimal distances for setting up a snare is trigonometry to cover as many quantum interdiction points from a single moon or planet. It's literally called, you know, trigonometry. It's just easier to, you know, just do what we call a leading snare. Too much for a video game? I think you're adding way too much. I think you're thinking of it as being way too complex than what it actually needs to be. Planet's already rotating on an axis. Then it just becomes the planet moving on an orbit along a known pathway. I don't see it as complex as what you're talking about, Mortals. We already have the mathematics of being able to do it. Hell, it's actually how they saved the Apollo 13 crew. They used mathematics to do it. They worked out the bloody slingshot path that they needed to be able to take so that they could actually save themselves. And they didn't have anywhere near as complex computers or powerful computers to work that one out. We're talking about maths, and when it comes down to it, numbers aren't going to lie. Have I played EVE Online? I dabbled in it a bit, I didn't get too far into it. I was actually doing more research on EVE Online for the snares and traps and that. But the video that I wanted to share with you guys right now, and mainly for you, Flying Wombat, I want to show you guys what Elite Dangerous's FSD interdictions look like. So here's the video here. For Elite Dangerous, this is 10 months old, so it's actually quite recent. But this is actually a really good, succinct explanation of what FSD interdictions is.
The frameshift drive interdictor is an optional module that can be used to pull other ships from supercruise. Once a tether is established, a minigame between the attacker and the victim starts. The attacker has to keep the ship pointed towards the victim, while the victim has to align with an escape vector. On the sides of the HUD you will see 2 bars. These bars show you how close you are to either winning or losing the interdiction. If you are being interdicted and win the minigame, the interdiction is aborted. The attacker emergency drops and has to wait for the long FSD cooldown before they can get back into supercruise. If you lose, however, both you and the attacker get emergency dropped. From then on, it is you and the attacker in the same instance for the duration of the long FSD cooldown. There is, however, also another outcome. During the minigame, you can choose to give up and slow down. This is known as submitting to an interdiction. Against players, this is usually the best choice, as players are way more competent at interdictions than NPCs. Submitting to an interdiction results in a regular drop. This means you get the short cooldown instead, and can start leaving the instance after just 5 seconds, as opposed to 40 seconds from a long cooldown.
Now, I'm just going to pause here because he goes into the modules and all that, and what I wanted to talk about was when it came to, was it the minigame? Like, it's actually a really good explanation. This is a really good frame for it, actually. So, you know, the escape vector doesn't need to be exactly the same. That reward's not fighting it then. Kind of, it puts you in a position that if you're going to fight, like, if you feel comfortable enough fighting, you can just submit to the interdiction and then duke it out from there. Because as Old Mate points out, if you both get pulled out of FSD and, you know, the attack is successful, you both get dropped out and you're both at a disadvantage. Whereas if you submit to it, the attacker, you know, like, gets dropped out, you drop out as well, but you recover faster. Which means, in this scenario, I guess this would be the difference between what a cargo hauler would do and what a criminal would do, based on if they were getting chased by a pirate or the criminal's getting chased by a bounty hunter. A player who's a criminal getting chased by a bounty hunter would be better off submitting to the interdiction and fighting back, because they've got a better chance. More than likely they're in a ship that's more combat capable and would fight back. Whereas a cargo hauler is obviously in a cargo ship, not as well equipped for flight combat, so they're going to want to try and escape the vector. So they would try and fight it more than what a criminal would, if that makes sense. But to me, it's about adding options, and I'm all about that when it comes to games. Like, add as many options as you can, which is why I like this, you know, idea. Now, obviously, this comes down to, you know, like, skill. Like, if you can keep the target within your FSD interdictor and you complete your bar, you affect them. Well, whereas if, you know, they're able to fill their bar up, they escape. Now, for Star Citizen, and the way that I foresee that it could work, instead of an escape vector, I'd say, you know, some sort of weakness, you know, like a weaker signal point for the QED. And if you start pushing into that, the Mantis pilot needs to, you know, reposition their ship so that they can enable a stronger point of their QED to, you know, keep you in dampener range. And it just becomes this whole, you know, flight movement system where the target is always trying to move to the position where your QED dampener is at its weakest point, and your QED ship is always trying to maneuver to counter that. Now, obviously, during this entire encounter, if it's a pirate group attacking a cargo hauler, the pirates are going to be there en masse and they're going to be shooting at the target. The cargo hauling ship should have some turret gunners and escorts firing back and, you know, going after the Mantis to harass it, increasing the opportunity for that Mantis, for that target ship, the cargo ship, to get away. But on the other side, where QED is utilized by criminals, we're looking at a position where the bounty hunter may be on their own because fucking everybody wants to be Boba Fett, or, you know, in this case, in this day and age, the Mandalorian. So they're there by themselves in their Cutlass Blue. They're going up against a criminal who's also by themselves because they're going around memeing and, you know, just flying red. So it comes down to, you know, flight skill, trying to get away. Now, you know, the criminal could turn around and try and fight back, you know, and try and win the fight. But if they feel like they're, you know, outmatched over skill, this is literally going to be the time where they're going to need a mechanic that they can utilize to escape, or else, you know, people, you know, keep sitting there talking about how pirates have it over cargo haulers. Well, it's like, well, what about, you know, when bounty hunters start using QED as well over criminals? Because we're not always going to be able to fight back. See, silence. Yeah, the escort should be looking for the Mantis or the Cutlass Blue. That's the thing, is that there's a lot of things that players can do now to overcome QED. But there's not much that the pilot can do. Like, they're literally at the mercy of the entire encounter, which to me isn't a great way to put a player. Now, flight combat skills do mean, if you develop them, you can improve your chances of overcoming QED, but it's still a passive effect. The Scorpius is a QED ship. We don't talk about that around here. The Mantis DS. Fucking... the Scorpius DS. Man. Don't get me started on that shit. But yeah, so we'll move into the next part of this video, which, you know, goes into a little bit more in depth about the modules and that.
Interdictors come in different ratings and sizes. The only difference between them is their capture range. The game indicates this range in seconds. This might seem odd at first, as we are talking about distances, but what this basically means is that you are in range of pulling the target if you could get to their position within the defined duration. For this measurement, the game looks at your current possible maximum speed, which is defined by your distance to nearby gravity wells. To be able to interdict someone, you need to be behind them. A stock interdictor has a facing angle of 50 degrees. With engineering, the angle can be increased to as far as 110 degrees, at the cost of a reduced capture range and higher power consumption. Alternatively, you can get a long-range interdictor, which will give you a longer capture range at the cost of a tighter facing angle. Note that you cannot pull a target if they are flying in orbital cruise around the planet. If the target flies into orbital cruise during the interdiction, the minigame gets aborted, and both ships stay in supercruise, assuming they were not too quick when flying into orbital cruise. Also note that, for some reason, Frontier decided to give the Salt Kruger ships a hidden interdiction buff. This buff helps the Beluga, Orca, and Dolphin to either escape or interdict another ship easier.
So there you have it. Elite Dangerous FSD Interdictor gameplay, which, to me, like, I don't know if you guys have done it. I played a little bit of Elite Dangerous, and I got to do some of the interdiction gameplay. When I first encountered it, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. And then ended up fighting an NPC ship and destroyed it, and then just kept going on my way. But when I went and, you know, started trying to pirate, or do piracy, and, you know, I was doing it in solo mode against NPCs because I wanted to get it done as fast as possible to experience piracy in Elite Dangerous, I found it a lot more engaging than what we've got with the Mantis. So I'd hope that CIG, when it comes to, you know, QED and updating the game mechanics so that it's a bit more involved with what's going on, that isn't as dependent on, you know, a player being, you know, like a flight combat fucking ace, of having a small army with them to be able to fight back against pirates, or, you know, in the case of criminals, you know, that they don't need their entire gang with them to escape a bounty hunter, especially if they find themselves in a position where they're overmatched, that they are able to engage in gameplay that allows them to be able to escape through utilizing skill and components. Fake ships? Nah. Like, I don't like the idea of specific manufacturers being good at specific things, especially when it comes to ship modules. I think it should just be that the modules are really what make the ships better. And then the purpose of the ship as opposed to the manufacturer influences the results. You know, like for example, the Eclipse has stealth buffs, just like the Prowler and the Talon do. Those frames made by different manufacturers have buffs for reducing signatures, so improving your stealth signature. That's the way I think CIG should go. So a ship like the Cutlass Blue should have a buff for QED. A ship like the RSI, Mantis, and the Antares should have buffs for QED. Because, you know, like, as far as I'm concerned, and this is something that, you know, it bothers me so much that Drake keeps getting pushed as, you know, this is for pirates and all that sort of shit. It's like, we're going to use what works. We're going to use the best tool for the job. And if we're not using the best tool for the job, then we're doing it wrong. I'll have to be able to stick a weak size 1 QED on my Buccaneer, 100%. Like, there was a time where CIG was actually talking about EMP components being detachable, and you would mount them on missile racks. And, you know, the funny thing is that the Raven's EMP modules are positioned where a Saber's missile racks would be. So, right now, the missile racks on a Raven are taken up by EMP modules, but if CIG goes down the route of modular EMP components, there's nothing stopping you from taking the EMPs out of a Raven and putting them on another ship. Same with the Hawk. Now, we're probably not going to see that for a while, but it would be cool that if you're going to put, you know, EMP modules or QED modules on other ships, that they take up a slot, you know, like a missile slot. You're still looking forward to electronic warfare? Yeah, CIG still hasn't released much information on that yet, unfortunately. We're kind of just sitting here treading water on it, which is a problem for us because, you know, like, the expansion of gameplay mechanics and opportunities, especially with electronic warfare, I think the first step of it is going to really be hacking. And we'll probably, I know they're working on hacking gameplay, and it was probably focused on Squadron 42, so we're probably not even looking at hacking gameplay from a ship, which would be the Legionnaire, which I think would be the first ship that would get it. But we're looking at hacking gameplay from FPS perspective for Squadron 42, but I could be wrong. Could be fucking so wrong. Maybe they've already got another ship there for hacking gameplay and it's almost ready to go. Maybe they'll announce it at CitizenCon. Who knows? Oh, alright. The hacking torp. What was it? They called them spikes. You attach them to missile mounts and you can fire them at a ship. It sticks to the hull and acts as an antenna that allows you to communicate with the spike. And then you can hack the ship components, so you can turn the shields off and all that sort of stuff. Honest prediction for CitizenCon. More pyro. We're going to see way more pyro. I think we're going to see a Squadron 42 sizzle reel. I think what they're going to do is they're going to... I don't know if they'll give a Squadron 42 release date. If they do, they're going to project at least 12 months out. And they're going to go Citizen, you know, like Squadron 42 next year, probably just after CitizenCon, or next year's CitizenCon, maybe. Like, I don't think they'll show anything for Theaters of War. They might, because with the structure that they're going with Arena Commander, Theaters of War could be a mode for Arena Commander as well. but it's probably not ready. Yeah, they'll show more pyro stuff. They'll talk a bit about server meshing. Sizzle reel for Squadron 42. I think that's really going to be about it of note. And then they'll talk about tools that they're building. Maybe, you know, the ships that they'll announce. I don't know, probably, they'll probably do a fighter. Actually, no. They've done all the ships that they had planned on doing for CitizenCon last year. So the ship talk that they do, they'll show the, you know, the 4 different ship types, and then they'll, you know, vote on those. Yeah, they did take Squadron 42 off the store, and they haven't put it back up there. I don't know. Like, maybe they are going to announce it, and they're going to say, yep, Squadron 42 next year, answer the call, 2024. 8 years later. 8 years after the last time they said to do it. Sizzle reel for it. That's why I think they'll do a sizzle reel. Like, even if they don't announce that they're going to release it next year, I still think they're going to do a sizzle reel for it. Like, just to get people hyped. CitizenCon is always a big ship sale. Yeah, well, there always is a big ship sale. Was it last year was a Galaxy? I don't think they're going to do another alien ship. They may do another, like, industrial focus ship. Last year was about modularity. Maybe they'll go for another... If they go for another ship that's got modular, it'll be something along the lines of, like... I reckon they'll do another Origin ship. Actually, no, Origin was like 2 years ago with the 400i. I reckon they'll still do a larger Origin ship. Unless they bump the... what's it called? Unless they bump the 600i up in size and classification to match a Carrack in the Galaxy. I have to put the spirit ships in there too. What ship needs to be added in game for Pyro as well? Well, they'll probably try and get the, was it the Anvil Liberator, sorry? Anvil Liberator in. I think that'll be the next, like, they'll try and put that in for Pyro because of the distances that we're traveling. Maybe they'll do like another services-based ship. Maybe something from Argo. Yeah, actually, maybe the Odyssey. We might hear something about that. For Pyro, at least. Because, like, the Odyssey is supposed to have some sort of refinery capability. And the ability to carry a Prospector or a ship in similar size to a Prospector. So maybe. And now that we can exchange and move saddlebags, it's always a possibility. Oh yeah, Mirai. Well, Mirai is supposed to be the kind of like the performance manufacturer branch of MISC. Big ship, I feel like it's on the back burner till they do the RSI Polaris base, maybe. Well, the Polaris is supposed to be like along the same size dimensions as the Hammerhead. I think it's actually a bit longer. Actually, there's more to a Polaris than there is a Hammerhead, so the Polaris may actually grow in size a little bit. Like, they're already pushing out a whole bunch of Crusader ships, so they may do one that's, you know, like closer to functionality as what a Carrack is, like similar to the Galaxy. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that at all, Soil. That's one of the things that I think CIGs realize is that for like Pyro, they're gonna like there's gonna be a need for ships that have a larger presence, a larger, you know, structure, larger crew capacity. Actually, Drake doesn't have anything along the same size as a Carrack as well. It kind of like goes Corsair and then it jumps to Kraken. So we might get something along the Drake lines. Might see more dual seat fighters. Maybe. Dobbs reckons that server meshing and Pyro won't come at the same time. Honestly, that wouldn't bother me. Like, it kind of makes sense that they would try and do static server meshing just with Stanton to start off with, so that, you know, the planets and the moons are all static server meshed. But then again, like, you know, if the planets are just treated as, you know, meshed servers, then what's the difference between doing that in Stanton and then doing that in Pyro? I don't know. Might see more dual seat fighters like the Hurricane and the Scorpius, possibly. Like, I know the Tavaran was supposed to have a two-seater fighter that wasn't the, that was between the Prowler and the Talon. I know the Tavaran had something like that. Maybe they'll do something for the Tavaran. Do I think they're actually going to push 320 live today? Yesn't. I have no idea. If they're going to do it, it'll be around the prime time for when our EU time zone is doing an event. So when's the next event for the EU guys? Yep. So they've got it planned. Yeah, cool. So I'm expecting around 6 PM. 6 PM, 6:30 PM. Liberator's probably waiting on some odd refuel or repair tech. I hope not. I really hope they don't wait on that. I kind of understand if they did, but I hope that they don't. I'm with you on that one, Fran. Like, I am really interested to see what they do with server meshing, because server meshing is, like, as far as I'm concerned, it's a core, like they say, it's a pillar of their game. What I'm hoping to not hear is they go, yeah, we could get server meshing to work, so we're now going down this direction that's going to take us, you know, that we're working on, and we've worked out all the details. Because then I'd be sitting there going, well, if you didn't get server meshing working, then you better be fucking showing us the thing that you said that you're working on to replace it working right now. Almost a full year now as well, yeah. Well, supposed to be being worked on for a full year. Whether that's they've actually been working on it for a full year is another thing. Only way they can get out of the pay to win or pay for JPEG funding model server meshing. Yeah, well, it's a proof of concept. They can prove the tech, they can sell it. And Disney. Yeah, Disney will buy Star Engine in a heartbeat. They'll be like, how much did you raise for this project? Based on an, you know, unknown IP? From a guy that, you know, made video games and had only just come back into the industry? Fucking... What's that? We have an entire fucking universe that we could build, known as Star Wars. Yeah, server meshing would be, I think, I'm along the lines of Dobbs there, like server meshing's being worked on for the last probably 6 months. Because they would have had to wait for 3.18 to stabilize before they could really push into it. They talked about instance hangers. Yeah. So instance hangers are an interesting thing. Unfortunately, it's a necessary evil. My only concern with it is, like, can we sneak, like, how does, you know, infiltration gameplay work with instance hangers? Hopefully we're able to join instances of hangers that we don't belong to. Imagine what the next WoW competitor would be with that tech. Maybe they would finally do Star Wars some justice. Honestly, like, the Star Engine is supposed to be providing modding support for the community. So once they finally finish building it, they're supposed to allow players to be able to do private servers and also, you know, mod the game and do modded servers and all that sort of stuff. Whether or not that becomes a reality is another thing. Considering how much time, investment and resources that they put into it, they might not actually be able to achieve that. I know there was a Babylon 5 community that was just, you know, like, they're all waiting there with bated breath, waiting for the ability to mod Star Citizen into Babylon 5 universe. But, you know, with Disney, like, Disney's waiting in the fucking shadows right now. They're waiting there and they're watching. And bloody, I'm pretty confident that if Chris Roberts said, you can buy a license to this engine for, you know, a couple of $100 million, that would be, if once they see Star Citizen, if it reaches gold, or when it reaches gold, Disney would be like, yep, we'll pay that. Opium of people who say they'll sell their tech, as if anyone was interested in CryEngine stuff. Well, it comes down to what the tech can do. And Star Engine is a heavily modified version of Crytek now, or the CryEngine. So it may actually be more user-friendly. Waiting for 40k to get to the Star Engine? Holy shit. Like, that's the thing, is like, if CIG plays it right, once they get Star Citizen to a certain point, they can move away from the funding model of, you know, selling JPEGs and license out Star Engine to other companies, even if it's a watered down version. And it kind of works in their favor if they do that, because they can stipulate in their licensing contracts that any sort of improvements that, you know, CIG want to take from other people's copies of Star Engine, you know, they can put that in their contracts that that's allowed. So if a company comes up with a fix for a problem that CIG wasn't able to sort out, then CIG can grab that, put it into their Star Engine and disseminate it out to everyone else. Then again, like, you know, CIG is also in the position where they could end up, you know, falling into obscurity because fucking some other game company comes up with a better engine. But we wouldn't know. You know, the Star Citizen killer hasn't come out yet. This time last year they were working on PS, and around Christmas or before Christmas they started working on server meshing. Yeah, I'll take that with a grain of salt. Chris not selling JPEGs anymore. Hey, one can dream, Fran. Star Citizen in the 40k universe would go so hard. Man, there'd be so, like, so many fanboys just jumping on that. It's because we didn't have enough information on Starfield. Like, to say that Starfield hasn't had an impact on Star Citizen though is ignoring obvious signs. Because it did. The player base has reduced because they're all playing Starfield. But I wouldn't say that it's going to kill Star Citizen. It's opening people's eyes to the potential. And unfortunately, I don't think CIG's got Star Citizen in the right position to capitalize on that opportunity. Say they got another 6 months to get their shit sorted. Games Workshop would definitely not step on their own feet over licensing. Yeah. I gave Starfield a go and I got bored of it. Like, my problem with it is that I'm not interested in the storyline, and I'm not really motivated to do much else. The main thing I wanted to do was experience a bit of its piracy gameplay, and that was about it. I still didn't get around to doing that, and I just haven't been motivated to get back into the game. It's a story-based game, yeah. Well, it's a Bethesda game, and the story is the central part of it. But normally, like, I played Fallout 3, Fallout New Vegas, you know, Morrowind, Skyrim, Oblivion. Like, I played all those games, so I know that you've got the storyline there, or you can just go off and do whatever the fuck you want. And it, to me, that's always been engaging. You know, just go off and do other stuff. But for Starfield, I feel like it's too focused on the story. It's like, you know, like, you got to do the story. And I'm not interested in that. I want to just branch off and do my own thing. And normally you could do that quite easily in the other games, but in Starfield it just doesn't seem to come across naturally. Alright. Yeah, you need a complete story to open things up, which is a problem for me because I don't want to do that. I just want to play the game however the fuck I want to play. I'm waiting for some more engaging mods as well. Like, they had an EVA mod, which looks pretty good. It plays like Skyrim. That's a 10-year-old game because it's built on the same engine, just updated graphics. Am I getting any ships this year? Probably gonna pick up. Actually, I gotta get a CCU for my Caterpillar to a C2. I don't have any plans on getting any new ships. I've got CCUs to ships that I eventually want to get, but I'm going to wait until those ships come out before I get them, before I use those CCUs. So for me, it's more or less like, I'm not that bothered by the ship sales. And dare I get rid of my Caterpillar? Man, I'm not as attached to ships as most people are. That we're no longer friends? Dobbs, you assumed that we were friends in the first place. We're acquaintances at best. Especially if it just came down to a Caterpillar. No, like, I don't know, I still haven't decided yet. I'll probably pick up the CCU. My main problem is, though, is that we need a C2 to be able to move cargo. Like, the Caterpillar is just limited. And that's the problem that I have with it. It's like, I feel like the Caterpillar needs a rework. so that it can carry 32 SU boxes. And honestly, I think it should be on par with competing with the C2 with its modules. It shouldn't be as restricted as it is. But yeah, honestly, I don't like, there's not enough people complaining about it. Two cats, one to CCU and one for funds. Well, the Caterpillar is supposed to come out with additional modules, and they still haven't told us what the fuck they're supposed to be. Like, they showed us concepts like 7 years ago now? 6 years ago. Back in 2017. You know, like a barracks module, a docking column module, repair, medical. And it was like, hey, that's all really cool. Actually, one of them was a shop module as well. And that's all really cool that, you know, you guys are coming up with those concepts, but where the fuck are they? You know, where the fuck are they? I want those modules. I want to know what modules we're getting for the Caterpillar. Because that would be the main motivation to keep it. It's like, I'm not going to use it for cargo hauling, I'll use it as a mobile base. Land it on some moon or fucking planet in the middle of nowhere and use it as a mobile outpost. What happens first? Cat modules or working cat elevators on the sides? I'd say the elevators. Because they've shown concept work that they've done with the cargo modules, where they've actually had the elevators coming down to the ground. They just haven't introduced it into the game yet. Oh, the Galaxy is the first module ship. It was the ship that they wanted to showcase modularity with, and everybody's sitting there going, are you fucking serious? You've got the Retaliator, you've got the Vanguards with their bucks, you know, battle upgrade kits, which are supposed to be modules that drop in and out of the fucking frame, which don't. And then, yeah, the Caterpillar. Like, I think CIG really could have taken a page out of Starfield's book when it came to their approach to ship designs. In that they just let the players build the ships the way they want. They provide them the components and the players put them together. And then ship manufacturers just have pre-built ships. But we're not getting that, are we? Alright, guys, it's about that time. I'm going to call it a night. Got about 5 minutes left. We're doing a module rework for the Retaliator first, and now 2 years later we've cracked modularity 1 year ago. Nothing since then. What ship do you like to drop troops, Prowler or Redeemer? Well, if I want the troops to get there, I'd use a Redeemer. Unfortunately, the Prowler is being nerfed to hell. They, when they first released it, it was the best heavy fighter in the game. The Prowler was, and then they nerfed it to hell and broke it so badly. That said, I hope the Prowler does get, you know, reworked and fixed and updated so that it actually functions like a proper dropship, because it is a fucking cool dropship. But right now, it's the Redeemer. When they fix the Prowler, it'll be the Prowler. The Valk's alright. I just like the doors on the Prowler. To me, the Prowler looks like a ship that you wouldn't want to fuck with. The bloody Valkyrie just looks like a fucking giant brick with engines slapped on the sides. Well, it's not about buffs, it's about just fixing the ship. Its speed is a problem. Its bloody engines are an issue. It overheats too quickly. Its gravlev doesn't work. The dual seats in it are broken most of the time. It's a real problem. They do need to fix it. So I'd love to use the Valkyrie as a pirate ship, but it's just not built for it. Maybe with Mastermodes it might become a viable pirate ship. Maybe. But for now. Yes, there are a lot of bugs and issues with the Prowler still. It's disappointing. I really wish that, like, there's so much more potential in the other ships for piracy, and we're gonna have to wait until Mastermodes to see if we can realize the potential of some of them. Like the Redeemer could actually be a decent piracy ship. The Constellation could be a decent one. The MSR maybe if, even for data piracy or something like that. The Corsair for sure. But it really comes down to, you know, like the speeds that we're moving at. Because right now, piracy favors fighters. You know, the largest ship that you really should be using for piracy is the fucking Cutlass Blue. From my understanding though, for 320, the Inferno may actually become part of piracy compositions to soft death ships quicker. Because ballistics bypass shields, and you know, the Inferno has a big fuck off Gatling gun. It does a lot of damage, so soft deathing ships, if you can get through the shields, if you can damage the hull before you get through the shields, it's worth looking at. That said though, I'd prefer to focus on distortion damage and disabling ships. Increase the difficulty a bit. Alright. Guys, that's pretty much it for the stream for tonight. Thank you very much everybody for coming along. The next stream is going to be tomorrow. And we may actually rearrange the stream around. If we get 320 going live in the next 5 hours, then the next stream is probably going to be focused on piracy gameplay instead of getting into Arena Commander and sweating it up. Yeah, getting out there, doing some piracy in 320, pushing out there to, you know, remind everybody that piracy is still a thing. See if we can get a whole C, pirate a whole C, and cry when we have to unload all those boxes into multiple C2s. But yeah, that's it for tonight. Let's see, we're gonna finish off with a raid. Didn't do one last stream, but I'd like to finish off with a raid. Let's go to Twitch. You guys got a suggestion for someone to raid? Let me know. Who should we raid here? Cayman Oz. Who's this guy? He looks like he's doing piracy. Oh my god. Not watching an ad. I want to see what he's doing. I want to make sure that he's not calling it a night too. What's his schedule? How long has he been going? Oh, he's getting towards the end. Well, let's rate him anyway. He's an Australian too. Alright, so we're getting ready for a raid. I'm gonna go raid Cayman. Cayman Oz. Alright. Thank you very much for coming along, everybody. I'll catch you all tomorrow night, 7:30 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, GMT +10. Feel free, for those who are going across as a sub, to drop the Mongrel laughing emote. And I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye.